Kang Seol stands, his blood-stained sword in hand, as Jhamad, the orc chief, kneels before him. "I'll be your shadow," the monster pleads. How did the Snowman rewrite the fate of the Jagged Mountains? To understand this reversal, we need to go back to the very beginning. When I close my eyes, the world I know fades away, and a new life emerges before me. A place where peaceful routine gives way to brutal combat against creatures that seem to have crawled straight out of a nightmare. It's a parallel reality that no one else can see or understand. My name is Kang Seol, I'm 25 years old, and my real life is utterly boring. Raised in an orphanage and completely talentless, I spend my days working at some random convenience store. "So, are you really going out with her?" customers ask, but I couldn't care less. Being the quiet type, I just let the mundane days repeat endlessly, one after another. But there's something different about me. I've been living the same dream every single night for exactly 17 years. The dream is my only refuge, and it all began when I was just a lonely child. Back then, I didn't understand anything that was happening around me. I'd wake up in a completely foreign place and wonder, where am I? Amidst that darkness, I spotted an incredible building that gleamed under the stars. It was an imposing structure, filled with magic and mysteries I'd never even imagined. I walked towards those doors as if possessed by a greater force. Suddenly, voices echoed in the gloom. "Are you new here? Please, come this way." That's when I met a mysterious woman hidden behind a fox mask. I followed her to an immense banquet hall, where everyone present also wore bizarre masks. A man with a crow mask announced, "All right, it's time to roll the dice." They discussed game pieces, choosing archers and butchers, while the fox introduced me as the newcomer. I looked at my hands and didn't understand why I was wearing that adult disguise. Well, a new friend? Sit here," said the man with the lightning mask, welcoming me. When they asked what they should call me, I simply replied with my childhood nickname, Snowman, I said, and the fox loved it, asking me to choose my own game piece. I decided to focus on the ice attribute and chose the mage class to start. In the next instant, the character was created before my eyes, emanating a chilling blue energy. The man with the lightning mask smiled and said, "I like your boldness, Snowman, so let's start this game." His hand gripped the die and cast it, initiating a breathtaking journey. Those masked individuals were experienced and seemed to thoroughly enjoy the imminent danger. "Damn it! We'll be annihilated! Go, Snowman! Roll the die now!" the desperate jester cried. I was nervous, wondering if I just needed to roll the die and choose the best options. A menu with tactical choices appeared before me, and I decided to use ice magic. My mage raised his staff, and mana began to vibrate at a deafening frequency. He concentrated all his power at the tip of his weapon, preparing a spell of complete immobilization. An intense glow enveloped the battlefield as the spell was finally conjured. The monster shrieked in agony, and my companions praised, "Well played, Snowman. That was an excellent choice." Witnessing magic become real so close to me was something I would never forget. The crow-masked man took the front line, saying, "Now, leave the rest to me." They all charged forward with a war cry that echoed throughout the banquet hall. The combat was frenetic, with swords clashing against the enraged dragon's tough scales. Every move was a deadly dance between life and utter destruction on that field. My blood boiled, and the adrenaline felt so real that I forgot it was just a dream. Today's adventure ends here. Did you enjoy the world of eternity? The fox-masked woman asked. I was awestruck, realizing that luck and strategy shifted the fate of each piece. "It's just the test version, but it's already so much fun," commented the other masked players. The jester invited me to form a group again the next day, and I accepted. Since it was just a dream, I decided not to overthink it and simply enjoy the madness. But at the orphanage, the other children asked if I was going crazy with these dream stories. "There's something wrong with his brain. Don't play with Kang Seol," they'd say, excluding me. No one believed me, and deep down, I knew that isolation was something natural. I was the class liar, the odd one out who lived in a world that didn't exist for them. Even so, the dreams persisted, and my body woke up utterly exhausted, as if I had truly fought a grueling battle. I didn't care about their opinions. All I wanted was to know if my friends were already there. The fantasy castle glowed once more, beckoning me to dive into another epic adventure. I walked towards the grand hall, feeling the familiar weight of my wizard's cloak draped over my shoulders. "Snowman, you're here! We've been waiting for you!" they exclaimed with genuine joy as I stepped inside. They bickered among themselves, eager to see who would get to play with me on what was destined to be our final day. I never dared to ask the secret of these dreams, fearing I might never be able to return to this place. It didn't matter if they were gods or demons, this place had become my true home. Laughter and the roll of the dice were all I needed to feel truly alive. Today, Snowman shall embark on a solo adventure to attempt the final challenge of Ascension, the sage announced. Everyone encouraged me to go straight to the end, for no other story had been as incredible as mine. A shimmering, floating staircase emerged amidst the clouds, leading to the highest point of the world of eternity. I had become an idol to them, the sole one capable of reaching the peak of this universe. The news that the trial version would end today left a heavy ache in my chest. Don't be sad, tomorrow the official launch will happen, and our dream will finally become reality, the blonde girl said reassuringly. The man of lightning spoke of reclaiming divinity and taking revenge on insects, words I utterly failed to comprehend. Divinity? Insects? I mused, but quickly decided to focus solely on my final mission, ascending to the heavens. I needed absolute focus for the ascension, consciously ignoring the strange things they sometimes said. Over the past 17 years, I had crafted 30 narratives, yet only 9 came close to challenging the very pinnacle. And this, without a doubt, was my last chance to engrave my name into the history of this world. Everything hinged on this single roll of the dice. I closed my eyes and prayed for a perfect outcome. The die settled, and the shock was immediate. A critical failure, an outcome I never expected to witness now. Milan, my hero of so many years, began to lose his footing on the crystalline step. His staff slipped from his grasp, and he felt the void relentlessly pulling his body downwards. The fall was inevitable, and despair seized my chest as I watched everything crumble before me. "No!" I screamed, but the message on the screen was cruel. Milan had failed his final ascension. "It's such a shame, Snowman, to end like this after so many attempts," my friends lamented, gathered around the table. I was utterly devastated, feeling the crushing weight of defeat obliterate any hope I still clung to. The system prompted if I wanted to abandon Milan's adventure, but I knew a mere human wouldn't ascend so easily. Even in defeat, I received strange rewards, special-level edible items that now seemed utterly useless. "Well, this isn't so bad," I muttered, trying to find a positive side to so much lost dedication. My feet touched the ground, but the sensation was far from that of being in my ordinary bed. I opened my eyes, and complete shock washed over me. Injured and bewildered people were everywhere. "Where am I now?" A desperate man screamed beside me, staring blankly into space. "Are there any Koreans here? Does anyone know what's happening?" Voices mingled in a cacophony of chaos. A woman shrieked for her child, and I realized this place was definitely not my room anymore. A floating screen materialized in the air, displaying a points ranking. Could this be the official launch of the game? My data was private, but my score stood at 327,000 points. I glanced at the top and saw I was in first place, far exceeding anyone else. The other names on the ranking had significantly lower scores, barely reaching a total of 100,000 points. 300,000 points? That's impossible! I barely managed 50 fighting for my life, a tattooed man roared. They were furious, demanding to know who this genius was, who knew so much about this bizarre situation. "He's hiding because he must feel guilty." "Show yourself, whoever you are," they demanded. I remained silent, simply observing the despair and confusion that gripped the crowd. I realized everyone there spoke Korean, which indicated we were in some kind of regional server. A masked man named Corden announced that the fusion between worlds would occur on that very day. This meant something on a global scale was unfolding, and we weren't the only ones involved. We were likely just a small piece on a much larger and more dangerous chessboard now. The system announced a rest period in the free city of Kongori, offering temporary respite. I still thought of the failed ascension, but now I had a new life to manage here. The portal opened, and we were whisked away to the walls of a seemingly medieval city. A month off? What does that even mean? The adventurers wondered, questioning if they were simply being left to die. We received adventurer IDs, and I pondered how on earth I was supposed to use them correctly. I noticed a guy drifting away from the group and decided to follow him, curious to see where he was headed. I strode with confidence, feeling that my 17 years of knowledge would finally prove truly useful. The guard at the gate widened his eyes upon seeing my pass, granting me immediate entry. "We can get in. Let's go. We'll discuss the rest tomorrow." The desperate crowd began to push. I wondered how many people they intended to cram into a single city like this now. The ID was the necessary proof to enter, but the real problem was the overwhelming influx of new people. There were likely already other adventurers who had finished their missions before us, occupying all the best spots. If I didn't hurry, there probably wouldn't be a single decent room left for me to rest my exhausted body. I spotted a well-maintained inn and entered without hesitation, ignoring the clamor of the streets. The owner, a bearded man, asked who I was, and I immediately requested to rent a room. "Show your ID first," he demanded, wiping the counter with a grimy old cloth. I asked if there was a vacancy, and he said only an expensive room remained, which I accepted on the spot. "For a day?" he asked, surprised when I stated I'd be staying for an entire month. He charged 10 gold coins, a hefty price, but one I could afford with my rewards. He offered food and a bath for 2 more coins, and I accepted, desperate for just a bit of peace. "Ha ha, you're generous. I like that," he chuckled, pocketing the gold with a greedy glint in his eyes. I was directed to the room on the right side of the upper floor, as isolated as possible. The voices of my dream friends echoed in my mind, reminding me that I had done my best. The hallway was silent, and the scent of old wood brought a strange feeling of both comfort and danger. Finally, I had a safe place to sleep after so much accumulated stress and mental turmoil. I summoned a shadowy spirit and commanded, "Ensure nothing happens while I'm sleeping." It obeyed. I collapsed onto the bed, feeling the weight of the world finally lift from my overly tired back. I had been awake for over a full day, ever since that nightmare that started it all. But as I closed my eyes, I realized I was returning to that mystical place once again. It was another lucid dream, but this time the atmosphere felt much heavier, charged with mana. I couldn't see anything through the darkness, but I knew it wasn't heaven. At least it doesn't look like paradise, I thought, feeling the cold ground beneath my bare feet. I walked through the void, reflecting on how much I had enjoyed playing that game for so long. A message appeared. "The Merchant of Madness, Janet, is appearing." It was a system I had never seen before. The air began to vibrate, and a powerful presence emerged from the shadows, observing me with curiosity. My footsteps echoed in the void as I tried to pinpoint the source of that intense energy. She approached, began to sniff me, and whispered, "You have a very good scent, human. I think I found you first, before that idiot Terrard," she said with a malicious smile. She wore an oni mask and extravagant clothes, moving with an elegance that sent shivers down my spine. I asked who she was, trying to maintain composure, even with my heart pounding in my chest. "You don't seem surprised to see me. Human? That's what they call you, isn't it?" she questioned. She said she didn't want to scare her customers, as she was a brilliant and very honest merchant. Janet introduced herself as the intermediary responsible for acting during the fusion of these two distinct worlds. Her name echoed through the void, and I realized she was someone I would have to negotiate with. I was shocked to hear that we, humans, had now been sold as slaves to other worlds. She explained that the owner of the world of eternity had sold everything, including its inhabitants, to other beings. "You should have been made slaves without losing your humanity," she said with a mocking tone. Basically, we were gladiators in a circus, and the audience paid madness to watch us fight and die. The image of a bloody arena flashed in my mind, revealing the cruel fate that awaited us. Madness was the opposing force of faith, and it was the currency of exchange in this bizarre new system. She sold powerful items in exchange for this accumulated madness, but a portion went to those who sold us. Finally, the pieces clicked into place, and I understood what Corden had been trying to say back at the beginning. Gods accumulated power by selling human lives as entertainment to beings from realities far beyond our own. The Ascension was the only path to escape this hell, and Janet confirmed I had an abundance of points. 3,000. "You've accumulated precisely 3,000 points," she revealed, and I asked if that was a lot. She chuckled, claiming there were so many items that looking through them one by one would make my head explode. I remained silent, processing the shocking revelation that I was one of the most valuable beings here. She presented me with jars of spices and pouches of ingredients, uncommon grade items that seemed deceptively simple. Janet found my choices peculiar, but I stated that nothing truly captured my interest. She took offense, her pride visibly wounded by my words, and decided to unveil something truly special now. Shadow Bloom, she announced, unveiling a rare grade item that pulsed with a vibrant purple light. She declared I likely didn't grasp its true worth, as she wouldn't offer it to just any novice customer. But I knew exactly what it was. With that flower, I could unlock an absurd and unparalleled power. I inquired about the price, and she suggested 3,000 units of madness, attempting to gauge if I understood its genuine value. I gazed at the item and realized it was the very key to my survival in this dog-eat-dog world. Janet grew uneasy with my silence and asked, "Do you think it's too expensive? We can negotiate, you know?" I claimed I wasn't fully familiar with the currency yet, but deep down, I knew I was getting a steal. She proposed a bonus if I bought it now, compelling me to promise we'd conduct business again in the future. She accepted the deal but demanded a promise. I had to guarantee that my next transaction would be exclusively with her. I asked if she wanted me to disregard any other merchant until we met again, and she merely confirmed with a nod. Janet insisted I didn't even need to buy anything next time. She just wanted me to see the new stock she'd acquire. I agreed to the terms, and she celebrated the successful sale, handing over the vials and rare herbs I desperately needed. She bade farewell with a sinister warning, hoping I'd manage to survive until our next encounter in this world of utter chaos. The system confirmed the acquisition of the Shadow Bloom, along with several jars of spices and fresh ingredients that seemed like quite ordinary items. I stared at the items before me as silence enveloped the room where I was resting after accumulating so much tension. I noticed I'd left my belongings scattered while I slept, and saw the system messages glowing in the air with information about the madness currency. Even in a safe place to rest, my mind was already racing through the immense list of tasks I needed to complete soon. The first step was to allocate the points I'd saved to my skills, and the second was to decide my next grand adventure. Thirdly, I needed to observe how other players were reacting and what the new trends of this bizarre, emergent system were. Finally, I had to resolve the side quest of the pocket watch I'd retrieved from the mountains, but the weather outside was atrocious. In the streets, the populace was in utter panic, shouting that this was the worst situation in history and demanding where in hell the government was. I watched groups forming and noticed many adventurers already growing close, but their physical state was deplorable and fraught with tension. Suddenly, a man in a suit ascended a platform and bellowed for everyone to listen, urging them to pay attention to his words. He began a discourse on unity and cooperation, attempting to convince the desperate masses that alone they would all perish swiftly. A civilian questioned if he was proposing a true alliance, and the man retorted that dividing the group now was simply inviting death. My perception skill immediately activated, and I saw he was employing oratory level 1 to attempt to sway his influence over the people. A woman challenged why they should trust him, stating that attempting to unify everyone now was a complete and futile waste of time. The man in the suit smirked and declared he had brought someone special, mentioning that the #1 ranked player preferred to conceal his true identity. He pointed to a muscular warrior beside him and asserted with absolute confidence that this was the finest adventurer. The crowd gasped, beginning to whisper that the man truly appeared strong and perhaps they could trust him to survive together. The leader stated he was offering a choice, for in this hell, power was all that mattered, not friends or gods. I observed everything from afar with my hood drawn, keeping my face shrouded in shadows as I watched the circus they were orchestrating in the plaza. The tension in the air was palpable, and I sensed that something was about to shift in the dynamic of these survivors, desperately seeking any shred of hope. The group gathered around the platform seemed to swallow the lie, while I kept my distance to avoid unnecessary entanglement. The man in the suit announced he would establish an official community where people protected one another, soliciting everyone's cooperation. I let out a sarcastic smirk, for I knew that soon this sense of protection would devolve into disgusting selfishness and a false guild nobility. The truth is, I trusted no one and cared not a whit what happened to these people in the end. I spotted an irritated woman and a frightened boy amidst the crowd, proving that fear was the only true reality in that noisy plaza. Several masked figures observed the scene, and I sensed I wasn't the only one who saw through the charade unfolding before us. I decided to continue my journey and arrived at the class training center, a shadowy place known as the domain of the Dark Seer. A robed man held a staff and inquired what I had come to do there, as the system displayed my training options. I replied that I was there to reinforce my current skills and acquire new knowledge to swiftly augment my combat power. The Master of Shadows asks me to follow him into the workshop, and I enter without hesitation, ready for the next level of strength. He grumbles about insects pretending to be gods, revealing this world's profound disdain for those who try to deceive the fate of others. I focus on the process and feel the magical energy beginning to flow through my body as I prepare to access the internal system. A flash of light hits my vision, and I feel a sudden impact, as if my soul is being pulled into a data stream. The skill tree appears before me with shimmering branches, representing every path of power I can choose to follow now. I comment that it's easy for me to adapt to this because I'm already very familiar with how this system works from my dreams. The lights flicker, and I feel the power settling, molding my mana so I can cast much more destructive and efficient spells. I return to the bustling part of the city and see the crowd still trying to understand the rules of this new world they were forcibly thrown into. I overhear a young man complaining that he was unemployed in real life, but here he became popular and wonders what happened to the world. Two women chat about a Steel Heart Guild and find the name cheesy, comparing it to other ridiculous names that have emerged. I continue walking with my own thoughts, ignoring others' gossip while planning my next strategic move to avoid an early death. I recall Corden's warning about how helping others could reveal my power and lead to my demise, so I decide to act alone. I start to wonder if anyone else besides me knows the secret behind this pocket watch I carry all the time. I stop in the middle of the street and stare at the golden object, feeling that it is much more than a simple side quest item. Suddenly, an old man with white hair bumps into me and freezes as his eyes fall upon the watch I am holding. I go on high alert as the old man stares at the item with an expression of absolute shock, as if he had seen a ghost. He stammers and asks if he can take a closer look at the watch, claiming he thinks he knows that ancient piece very well. I ask in surprise how he could know it, and he looks at me with tear-filled eyes that hide decades of a painful past. I think to myself that the Eternity World test should have ended yesterday, and I wonder why I'm still living this dream. The old man drops the bombshell, saying he knows the watch because he himself crafted it many years ago. He introduces himself and asks if we can talk in private for a moment, guiding me away from the noisy, curious street crowd. We arrive at an old house, and he opens the door with a trembling key, saying that was his old workplace. He lights a lantern and comments that it's a good place for us to have a serious conversation without being interrupted by anyone interested. The old man looks around the dusty room and sighs with relief, seeing that nothing has changed since he was last inside. I realize the place is a watchmaker's workshop filled with tiny gears and parts scattered across all the dark wooden tables. He formally introduces himself as Bill Marcus and says I can just call him Bill, while continuing to stare at the golden watch. The name Bill Marcus echoes in my mind, and I get a strange feeling that I've heard that name somewhere very important. My head begins to throb violently as I try to force my memory to search for any trace of that name in the archives of my past. I conclude that I've probably done this watch quest before, as there would be no other reason for this name to sound so familiar to me now. The big problem is that I can't remember anything detailed, which leaves me frustrated and on high alert. Bill Marcus listens to my explanation of where I found the item and nods, seemingly finally understanding how the piece returned to him. He asks me to hand over the watch for a moment so he can check a crucial detail on the back of the lid. Bill points to an almost illegible engraving and confirms it's his own handwriting, proving he is indeed the original master watchmaker. I observe the difficult-to-decipher writing and realize that every detail of that item was designed to be unique and very special to someone. He begins to tell me that, 20 years ago, he gave that watch as a gift to a person who was very important in his life. A mental image appears of a woman in chains being watched by gigantic shadows, revealing a cruel fate that happened long ago. Bill says his granddaughter was captured by the mountain trolls and that he faced terrible dangers just to try to see her one last time. I feel a pang in my chest hearing his story and realize that the connections in this world are much deeper than I imagined. I remain silent, processing the information as the old man continues his tale with a voice laden with sadness and regret for not having acted. He says no one wanted to help him at the time, neither the free knights nor the mercenaries. Everyone turned their backs on his utter despair. But then someone appeared and promised to help save his granddaughter, and that mysterious person's name is engraved on the back of the watch. I look at the watch and say I don't see any name there, but Bill interrupts me, saying there's a secret in the engraving. He shows me a phrase that says, "Good luck follows the brave," and then reveals the name I so feared to hear now. The engraved name is Snowman, the same code name I used as my legendary avatar during all my years of playing in Eternity World. Bill Marcus stares at me in shock, saying he can't believe that 20 years later a man of the same age and name appeared there. I feel a sudden impact on my consciousness and enter a state of deep shock, feeling reality cracking before me. Bill is startled by my reaction and asks what's happening to me as I begin to stagger backward, almost losing my balance. The words Bill and granddaughter hammer in my head incessantly, bringing flashes of a life I thought was just a dream. I realized that Snowman wasn't just a name I invented now. It was an identity I built and used to change this world before. The image of a powerful ice mage appears in my mind, and I realize he was my first game piece created decades ago. I finally understand that the actions I took in the game affected the real world of Pangaea, and that I built immense influence without even knowing it. I start to breathe with difficulty as I try to organize the chaos of memories flooding my brain like a dam that's finally burst. A blonde woman in a library warns that they're closing in an hour, but I completely ignore her while searching for answers in an ancient book. The truth hits me like a punch. Everything that happened on the board was real, and I arrived here 20 years after my character died. I pick up a book called 10 Years of Turbulence that chronicles the story of the heroes who changed the world, and I realize I am one of them. Over the past 20 years, my moves have shaped the history of this continent, and now I'm seeing the consequences of every decision I made in the past. I made history in Pangaea without even realizing I was dealing with real lives, not just lines of code in a computer system. The scene changes, and I find myself in an open field under a blue sky, feeling the weight of everything I've discovered about my own legend. Bill guides me to a specific spot and says it's his granddaughter's memorial, even though her body was never recovered from the trolls. The gravestone says she was the most adorable lady in the world, and I feel a bitter guilt for not being able to save her in that distant time. Bill says the grave next to hers belongs to the adventurer who had the same name as me, and was the only one who tried to help him. He asks me to look at the gravestone of the watch's owner, and I feel my blood run cold as I realize I'm staring at my own ancient grave. Engraved on the stone are the words, "Here lies one who never ignored the difficulties of others," a description that pierces my gamer's soul. I stare at my name carved into the cold stone and realize the gravity of returning to a world where I was already considered a dead hero. My hand trembles as I hold the pocket watch over the grave, feeling a physical connection to the hero I used to be in the game. I whisper that I arrived too late, as tears of frustration threaten to fall, feeling the weight of a promise I couldn't fully keep. The system reminds me of a term called fumble, which represents a player's catastrophic failure at the most critical moment of their epic journey. I remember that my first character, Snowman, was killed precisely because of such a mistake, and the trauma was so great that I decided to forget everything. My eyes glow with an intense golden light as the system begins to react to my proximity to the resting place of my old piece. A message warns that the watch has found its true owner, and I receive a skill point as a reward, while feeling an excruciating pain in my head. Bill shouts, asking if I'm okay as I fall to my knees on the ground, feeling as if my mind is being torn in half right now. Rays of energy begin to shoot from my body, and I realize that a forced inheritance process has been initiated by the system of the world of eternity. The system announces that the inheritance of Snowman has begun, and I feel like my brain will explode with the absurd amount of data being injected into it. Memories are rushing back like a hurricane of images and sounds, filling the empty gaps of my past and revealing all the hidden truth. I realized that my memories didn't vanish by chance. They were destroyed to protect me from the pain of losing everything I had achieved before. I understand that a fundamental part of who I was erased during the transition, and now I am recovering my essence as a legendary elite player. I receive a notification that I have inherited Snowman's unfulfilled wish, and a new quest called Destiny, Things to be Recovered, appears before me. I ask what this destiny means, and the system explains that I must confront all the mysterious connections I left behind in the past. Bill tries to calm me down, asking me to take a deep breath, and I reply that I'm fine, despite still trembling from the shock. I thank him for his concern, and he makes a lame joke, saying he thought he'd have to dig another grave right there in the cemetery. The system warns that my affinity level with Bill Marcus has increased, and he says I can seek him out whenever I'm in a difficult situation. I thank him from the bottom of my heart, and he tells me that if I'm done with what I had to do there, it's best I move on soon. I keep thinking about the term transmission and how it works in this real world, realizing that the rules of the game are much more literal now. I stand up and face the horizon, feeling that I now carry the weight of 2 lives and an immense responsibility that I can no longer ignore. I understand that transmission in Pangaea refers to the process of passing skills and assets from an ancient hero to their legitimate successor in the world. The system shows that the massive greed ability has been transmitted to Jhamad, a powerful orc who is now part of my arsenal of summons. I realize that the gods were observing my pieces and admiring their growth, treating all of us as pure, cruel entertainment for their pleasure. I conclude that I need all my old memories to achieve ascension and finally escape this system of slavery where humans are gladiators. A month passes, and the situation in the city remains tense, with people wondering if the government will ever come to rescue them from this nightmare. Some try to keep hope alive, telling others to stay strong, but the look of despair on their faces reveals that no one believes in rescue anymore. At the Adventurers Association, groups argue about upcoming missions and complain that guild members are completely unreliable and selfish. I hear adventurers saying that rookies are killing each other just to steal basic equipment, turning the place into a complete lawless land. I enter the building and decide to focus only on the minimum necessary to survive, ignoring the chaos and fights happening around me all the time. I hear people asking for the so-called #1 player, wanting to be carried by him, without knowing that the guy is right there beside them. I look at the mission board and see that none of those adventures truly interest me, so I decide to look for something that's guaranteed and useful. I feel a sudden burning in my neck and see a punishment system acting against a human who tried to circumvent the rules imposed by the cruel gods. I remember that from the 3rd adventure, I can choose my own path, and I head to a specific corner of the association where rumors spread. I notice someone watching me intently from a table in the corner, a man with a sharp gaze who seems to be evaluating my strength. I approach and ask what he wants, and the man just stares at me with a mysterious smile that puts me on high alert. The system warns that this man is the clue to the adventure I'm looking for, and gives me dialogue options to try to get information from him. I choose the option that requires perception and tell him he doesn't seem like an ordinary person, asking what the hell he's doing sitting there alone. The man lets out a laugh and says I'm interesting, inviting me to sit because he was just looking for someone to work with. He explains that a major trade exchange is happening and that he needs guards to transport a carriage full of valuable goods to the city of Novira. My perception activates, and I see a red warning stating that the man is blatantly lying to me. But I keep my composure and listen to the rest. He claims he wants to entrust the mission to someone worthy and offers a generous reward, acting as if he's doing me an immense favor by choosing me. I accept the job, and he introduces himself as Arden, while I use my code name Snowman to finalize the official escort contract to Novira right now. I ask if there will be other adventurers on the mission, and he confirms that he needs more people to ensure the cargo reaches its final destination intact. The system displays images of celestial beings screaming that a filthy insect has defiled the heavens, revealing the hatred the gods now harbor for humanity. 2 low-level adventurers watch me from afar and begin plotting how they'll steal my equipment, thinking I'm an easy target for them. They remark that my clothes look expensive and that they overheard my conversation with the merchant, believing I've discovered some kind of trick in the quest system. One of them fears I might be strong, but the other says, Only a month has passed, and everyone should be at the same basic power level right now. The guy in red says the strongest have nothing to hide, and orders his partner to fetch 2 more guild members to ensure the heist. Meanwhile, Arden observes everything with a predatory gaze, planning his own scheme behind that escort mission that seems to be a trap. The next day in Kongori Plaza, the adventurers gather to depart, and the atmosphere is like a wake, with many feeling they're heading straight to their deaths. I realize that the 1-month break has stripped many people of their ambition, and I see the system announcing that the 3rd official adventure is about to begin. I hear people shouting for their friends not to die, and promising that everyone will survive, but I know the reality will be far bloodier and crueler. The contract is sealed, and the carriages begin to line up for the journey to the Great Forest, a place known to hide deadly and ancient dangers. The system's warning states that man-eating beasts and ruin hunters infest the area, making the guard mission extremely perilous for everyone. I remember this specific adventure due to the memories I inherited from Snowman, and I know exactly which monsters await us on the road. Snowman completed this mission with ease in the past, but I feel that this time, the variables have changed, and the challenge will be far greater for me. I recall that when I used my second game piece, I failed miserably on this very route, and almost lost everything I had gained back then. The image of the carriage following the narrow path brings me a sense of déjà vu, and I know that every bend in that road could hide a fatal ambush. Arden greets me, saying I arrived just in time, and introduces me to the other 3 adventurers who will be joining our escort group today. I recognize Seo Jin Chul and Baek Song Soo, who seem like friendly guys, but I realize they're the same ones who were watching me at the association with ulterior motives. I ignore their falseness because what truly matters is that the traces of my second game piece must be hidden somewhere along this route. A scarred man explains that we'll be the reserve guards and that there are many other mercenaries handling the main security of the cargo carriages. He says we should just follow the convoy and intervene if there's any serious trouble, leaving the reconnaissance and night watch duties to the professionals. The leader instructs us to board the middle carriage with 3 red ribbons and suggests we take advantage of the trip to catch some sleep. I freeze for a second, wondering what he just said, sensing that the detail about the ribbons is a crucial clue I almost overlooked. My companions think the mission will be too easy and start insulting me behind my back, believing I chose this job simply because it's a cakewalk and safe. I look at them and ponder how foolish they are for entering a chained adventure without knowing that the difficulty increases drastically with every kilometer traveled. The board is set, and the pawn begins to move toward danger. But what these idiots don't know is that I came to reclaim what is rightfully mine. A chess piece shatters on the ground, symbolizing the cruel fate awaiting those unprepared for the carnage. The rhythmic rumble of the carriage wheels against the road is the only music accompanying this convoy toward the unknown. The carriages advance in single file along the narrow road, while the weight of the silence between passengers becomes increasingly difficult to bear. Kang Seol keeps his gaze fixed on the path, feeling that every sway of the carriage brings him closer to a situation he has experienced before. He realizes that those travelers have decided to follow him, but their motives are still hidden beneath layers of falsehood and pure greed. Suddenly, one of the men fearfully asks if there are trolls in the region, dreading the worst type of player who seeks only destruction. Kang Seol remains alert, wondering if they are just trolls or professional assassins eyeing the rare equipment he carries. The tension rises when a mercenary asks what his role is, and Seol coldly replies, "I am a summoner." Laughter erupts in the carriage, and the bearded man scoffs, saying that kind of job must be the most boring thing in the world. The guy in red clothes tries to feign politeness, but then blurts out that in a place full of opportunities, a man should dream big. He continues the insult, saying that spears or swords would be more honorable, because a summoner who only watches from afar isn't a true man. In Seol's mind, the system notifications flash with insults from past players, mocking the supposed weakness summoners possess. A hooded man cuts off the laughter and asks if the Lord Summoner is already part of any important guild in the region. Seol replies that he doesn't belong to any yet, and the man smiles strangely, saying everyone needs someone to lean on. The stranger extends his hand in a seemingly friendly gesture, but Seol can feel the malice oozing from every pore of that mercenary. He suggests Seol seek out the Predator Guild when he returns, assuring him he'll find the necessary support there to survive the chaos. Seol simply says he'll keep that in mind, ignoring the insistence of the men who already see him as an easy target to manipulate. He remembers that abnormal problems have already occurred twice in the past, exactly on the same day and at the same time as now. Night falls and the carriage stops, for Seol knows that the first night of travel is always when the greatest disasters begin. Arden appears wearing a vest and asks if the food is to everyone's liking, trying to maintain a facade of a protective leader. Somewhere in the shadows, masked men prepare, and one whispers the definitive death sentence: "You die here." Arden offers warm alcohol to the group and says the drink is deadly, encouraging everyone to drink without any restrictions. The mercenaries down their mugs and shout in delight, asking for more meat and drink, oblivious that danger has already completely surrounded them. Seol's system triggers a perception alert, warning that there is something very wrong and suspicious about the smell of that offered alcohol. He discreetly activates Shadow Hand and realizes that Arden's show is about to begin, with a revelation that will change everything. Arden stands up and apologizes for the sudden interruption, warning that there has been a drastic change in our journey's original plans. He points to a barrel on the ground and the party mood dies the instant he begins to explain the new route. The men ask if they should stop somewhere before reaching Novira, feeling that the mission has become too strange. Arden shrugs and says there's nothing to be done, as the decision has already been made by those who truly control the contract. He offers triple the payment, promising 600 gold coins for each, and greed makes the mercenaries forget any fear. Seol observes the scene and thinks how ridiculous that agreement is, while an internal voice asks if he will die right there. Suddenly, the air is cut by a whistling sound, and death arrives flying before anyone can react to the attack. Someone desperately shouts for everyone to get down, but the warning comes too late for those distracted by greed. The man with the bandana barely has time to react before the first arrow finds its target with deadly precision. Screams of pain tear through the night as bodies fall onto the grass, painting the camp with the warm blood of adventurers. The sound of flesh being pierced echoes, and Seol moves with agility, narrowly avoiding being the next on the casualty list. A mercenary shouts Jin Songho's name, but his comrade is already lying lifeless, eyes fixed on the void. Panic sets in when they realize their friend is dead, and curses begin to fly as fast as enemy arrows. They scream for Arden, demanding to know what's happening, but the leader seems too calm for someone under direct attack. The chaos is absolute, and no one knows what to do as the darkness of the forest seems to spit more and more arrows at them. Masked men observe from above, coordinating the massacre with the coldness of those merely cleaning up roadside trash. One of the survivors points to a nearby carriage, shouting that it's the group's only remaining chance of escape. He says if they reach the forest, the attackers won't find them, and orders them to prepare the vehicle for a desperate departure. Arden grabs the man by the neck and tells him to shut up, reminding everyone that he is the one paying for the service. With a maniacal look, he asserts that if they want to live, they will have to follow his orders exactly from now on. He declares that playtime is over and draws his weapon, revealing that betrayal was part of the plan from the very beginning. The ground is covered by those who weren't fast enough, turning the camp into an open-air cemetery in minutes. The mercenary leader advances, but the despair in his men's eyes shows that the group's morale has already been destroyed. Someone shouts that they are fleeing in the carriage and orders all attackers to pursue the survivors without any mercy. The carriage lurches violently, running over whatever is in its path, as the sound of horse hooves pounds the forest floor. A man desperately shouts for Kyungmo to wake up, but his comrade is in a state that common medicine cannot cure. The man with glasses watches the carriage pull away, his cold expression revealing that he has no intention of letting anyone escape alive. Kyungmo stammers that it hurts, and asks if this is how he will die, while his friend screams his name in pure despair. Blood spills onto the carriage floor, and the survivor curses his own luck, realizing he drove straight into a dead-end trap. He wonders how such an easy mission turned into a nightmare, and cries out for an escape route that simply no longer exists. The mercenary looks at Kang Seol and orders them to join forces to get out of that hell alive. Seol calmly asks why he should help him, ignoring the hysterical warnings about the gravity of their situation. The man tries to move forward, but falls to his knees, screaming that his body isn't responding, feeling the terrible effect of the poison acting on his muscles. He accuses Seol of doing it, but the truth is far more bitter than the tip of an enemy blade. Seol pours some of the drink and warns that no one should swallow what a stranger offers so generously. The mercenary realizes the poison was in Arden's liquor and curses Seol, realizing the boy knew everything from the start. He roars that Seol planned everything with Arden, while knights appear on the horizon to finish the knight's dirty work. One of the masked men asks what Kodon is saying, but the sound of battle drowns out any explanation that could still be given. The order to pursue is given again, and the carriages are hunted like wounded animals amidst the dense, dark vegetation. Seol grips his staff firmly, while a sinister purple energy begins to emanate from his hands toward the ground. The ability glows intensely, and the air around Seol begins to vibrate with the presence of something extremely powerful and ancient. He points the staff, and darkness takes form, materializing an ally that would make any common warrior tremble in absolute dread. The survivors recoil in horror as they realize who Seol has just brought to the forest's bloody battlefield. Someone stutters Jhamad's name and goes into shock upon seeing the orc chief before their eyes, summoned by a mere boy. The mercenary recalls that this is the cursed chief of the mountains, someone even an entire guild couldn't defeat in the past. He suffers a mental collapse, unable to comprehend how a useless summoner managed to control such an absurdly high-level beast. The situation spirals out of control for the attackers, and the knights hesitate, realizing that their prey now has far sharper teeth. Seol observes Jhamad and tells them to wait, deciding it's time to see how far this web of lies and betrayal can stretch. The traitors beg to be taken, threatening that the Predator Guild won't leave Seol in peace if he abandons them on the road. Seol merely asks again why he shouldn't leave them, his icy gaze showing that pity is not part of his vocabulary. The carriage lurches violently, and one of the men is thrown out, falling straight into the hands of the executioners who were following close behind. The masked man tries to calm things down, saying everyone is too excited, while the aura of death only intensifies around them. The injured driver screams for everyone to hold on tight, for the road has ended, and what comes next is a free fall into the abyss. A rope snaps, and a scream of terror echoes through the forest as gravity finally claims its part in the massacre of that night. The horse whinnies in panic as the carriage plummets, transforming wood and flesh into a pile of unrecognizable wreckage at the bottom of the canyon. Another horse flees desperately through the woods, leaving behind a trail of destruction and the agonizing screams of those left to die. Silence returns for a few seconds, broken only by the panting breaths of those who manage to crawl out of the smoking debris. The man in green clothes tries to catch his breath, feeling every bone in his body protest against the violent impact he just suffered. The mercenary with tied hair stands up and orders all survivors to their feet, for the war is not yet over for them. He shouts that it's every man for himself now, because on a battlefield of this level, loyalty is a luxury no one can afford anymore. He calls for Arden but quickly corrects to Kujo, asking if the traitor truly thought he could escape the vengeance of his subordinates. The masked man intervenes again, asking for calm, but blades are already drawn and ready to taste the blood of former allies. Kujo laughs with disdain and taunts his rival, saying his tongue remains as foul as his low-level mercenary character. The sound of clashing metal echoes, and more screams of pain fill the air, as the internal struggle destroys what little remained of the escort group. A giant orc emerges from the shadows of the forest, roaring with a primitive fury that chills the blood of anyone still standing. Jhamad watches Seol and asks if he'll just stand by, but the young man decides that intervening now would merely be a waste of vital energy. Seol reveals that he has experienced carriage chase adventures twice, and knows the dark truth hidden behind this script. He hears Kodon's name mentioned and fixes his gaze on the masked figure, who seems to dictate the rhythm of this macabre dance in the woods. The plan was to turn the group members into offerings without resistance, but Seol's presence changed all the variables of this deadly equation. He knows that if the two groups clash now, no one will survive to tell the tale of what truly happened on that road. Seol moves through the shadows, observing every movement of the combatants with the surgical precision of one studying a chessboard. A precise strike pierces a mercenary's chest, and the attacker orders him to die quickly so as not to prolong his useless suffering. Seol remembers a figure who always appeared in the world of eternity and wonders if he is here to help or to complicate matters. The wounded combatant collapses to the ground and curses his stubborn adversary as his life rapidly drains through the open wounds of the battle. Slow, heavy footsteps approach the fallen man, and the sound of boots against dry leaves rings out like a definitive sentence. The man coughs blood and tries to focus his vision on the shadowy figure now looming over him with an overwhelming aura of power. He smells the familiar scent and asks if it's Snowman, pleading for a salvation he knows, deep down, he doesn't deserve to receive. Seol replies with terrifying calm that the man is already dead, and Kujo lets out a hysterical laugh as he accepts his own inevitable end. He admits he's lost too much blood to survive, and offers to tell an interesting story before his soul leaves this cruel world. Seol's system opens a choice screen, asking how he wishes to respond to the final account of the man known as Kujo. Ignoring questions about tattoos or pursuers, Seol says he doesn't need the story and begins to search the dying body of the traitor. Kujo warns that a giant monster is coming and that Seol will die anyway, letting out a final breath of pure malice. Seol ignores the curse and obtains the map of certain ruins along with its interpretation, valuable items that justify all the chaos of that night. Kodan speaks of not shedding human blood in the heavens, comparing the act to throwing trash in one's own bed, revealing his distorted philosophy of honor. Seol analyzes the map and realizes that Kujo's interpretation is completely different from what he knew from his past memories. Kujo's last words echo like a cursed warning, saying that Seol too will eventually surrender to his strongest and darkest desires. The system points to the location of the ruins near the Great Forest and offers options for what to do with the map and what remained of Kujo. Borgo's spirit seems to observe the scene as Seol makes his decision, denying any chance of mercy or return for the traitor. With a determined look, Seol states that he is the one who governs strong desires and decides to head to the ruins alone with the stolen map. Groans of pain continue to come from the carriage wreckage, where the few survivors try to understand what's left of their lives. The man in the red shirt realizes that everything went wrong and swears he will not spare the wretch who put them in such a deplorable situation. The sound of approaching horses makes their hearts pound, while a mercenary curses his companion who can no longer move his own body. Borgo appears with his knights and asks if they should return the traitor to where he should be, his tone suggesting a punishment far worse than death. The masked men panic, calling it complete nonsense, but before Borgo, their words lose all value and weight. Despair consumes those on the ground, begging their bodies to move before the executioner reaches their defenseless necks. Borgo, mounted on his black horse, contemptuously asks which bastard dared to cross his path on that fateful night. The warrior beside him announces that the targets have already been crushed and salutes the leader with a respect that borders on absolute dread in his presence. The scene is one of pure devastation, with bodies scattered across the grass and the torchlight illuminating the tragic end of an entire mercenary guild. One of the soldiers announces that they've found Kujo, pointing to the bloodied body of the man who tried to outsmart fate itself. Borgo dismounts his horse and walks towards the corpse, while the silence of his men shows that no one dares interrupt this grim moment. He reaches out and begins searching Kujo's body, looking for the item that motivated this entire bloody hunt through the dangerous forest. The leader sifts through Kujo's clothes with mechanical coldness, but his expression changes when he realizes that what he was looking for is no longer there with the dead man. He remains silent for a long time, and the tension in the air becomes so heavy that the surrounding soldiers can barely breathe from sheer terror. Borgo begins to laugh maniacally, blurting out that the map simply isn't on the body, revealing that someone was quicker than him. Kodan asks if they forgot what day it is, trying to justify the failure, but Borgo's fury accepts no excuses from those who failed their duty. Kujo's body is cast aside like trash, for without the map and the interpretation of the ruins, he is nothing more than a useless piece of dead meat. The elder warrior asks what happened, and Borgo merely looks at the prisoners, his eyes glinting with renewed murderous intent. He declares that he will uncover the truth right now, while the prisoners scream for mercy and promise to tell him anything to survive. Borgo demands to know the whereabouts of the map, but the man in the red shirt stammers that he doesn't know what the leader is talking about. He swears on his own life that he saw no map, but Borgo's gaze makes it clear he doesn't believe a single word coming from that mouth. The man in the purple hood watches in terror, feeling that Borgo's next strike will be the last he ever sees in his entire miserable existence. Borgo raises his axe, and the mercenary's agonizing scream echoes through the night, serving as a warning to anyone who tries to hide the truth from him. He asks the next prisoner if he knows anything, and the trembling man says he thinks he knows who took the precious map of the ruins. He reveals that a man named Snowman was in the carriage and assures them that if his body isn't there, he's the culprit for the theft. One of the soldiers confirms that someone from the group escaped earlier, reinforcing the theory that the fugitive holds the map. They mention that 2 trackers were killed trying to pursue him, and Borgo concludes that Snowman is the man he truly needs to hunt. The giant glares at the informant and demands more details, while the young man stutters, trying to remember anything else that might save his life. He recounts that Snowman was a summoner, and Borgo smiles sinisterly, finding it interesting that a caster caused so much trouble for his men. Before the informant can beg for mercy, Borgo executes him with a swift movement and orders the hunt for the summoner to begin immediately. He mounts his horse with renewed determination, ready to pursue the thief to the ends of that death-cursed forest. Borgo lets out a cruel smile and comments on how interesting it is for someone to dare steal what belongs to him, promising an unforgettable lesson. He orders them not to lose sight of Snowman under any circumstances, while Seol already spots the entrance to the ruins before his tired eyes. Kang Seol dismounts his horse and realizes that from here on, he'll have to proceed on foot to avoid attracting the attention of the hunters pursuing him. He whispers to himself that he has finally reached his destination, facing the colossal structure that holds secrets from an era long forgotten by all. Seol remembers that today is the day the harvest begins, and the system confirms that sending the map back would be a fatal strategic error. He seeks out the formation of 3 stones that meet in one spot, using his game memories to guide himself through the dense vegetation. He finally finds the bronze statue hidden beneath the fallen leaves, a key piece to unlock the path that leads to true power. With effort, he begins to rotate the statue clockwise, hearing the sound of ancient gears awakening after centuries of total silence. A click echoes, and Seol knows he has activated the correct mechanism, feeling the ancestral magic of the ruins begin to flow through the stone floor. Golden light spreads across the rocks, and the ruin maker seems to laugh in the system notifications, loving to see the player's ingenuity. The intense light pushes back the shadows, but Seol knows the terrifying guys pursuing him won't stop until they find what he carries. He approaches the main gate of the ruins and braces his heart for the challenges and monsters that surely await him inside. Suddenly, the system fires alerts that Borgo has used obstacle destruction abilities and is approaching with absurd speed. A crash echoes behind him, and Seol grinds his teeth, realizing that preparation time is over and a direct confrontation is inevitable now. Borgo's energy collides against the outer defenses of the ruins, and Seol feels the pressure of a legendary-level warrior trying to break his path. An enemy archer observes from afar and prepares to shoot, but Seol is already one step ahead of any simple ambush attempt. Jhamad warns that it's time to go, as the pursuers will arrive in moments, and the encirclement will close indefinitively on them. Kang Seol crosses the threshold of the ruins, and the gate begins to close, leaving Borgo and his fury outside the sacred walls of the temple. The system announces that he successfully survived the ambush, but warns that rewards will only be delivered at the end of this chained adventure. Chat notifications from other players or the system itself ridicule Snowman's situation, saying he's in gigantic trouble now. Kang Seol lets out a short, cold laugh before the darkness of the ruins fully swallows him, proving that the game is just beginning for him. Dying like an insect sacrificed to madness is not part of his plans, especially now that the official version has become real. He analyzes the ancient map and realizes that to open the hall's gate, the translation everyone uses is terribly wrong. The text speaks of 5 life sacrifices, but Seol grasps the true language hidden behind those ancient symbols. Spectators go wild, watching the boy tear the map in front of everyone, convinced he's finally lost his mind for good. If the translation were correct, the price to advance would be death, but he knows the secret is far simpler. He understands that the altar doesn't demand entire lives, but merely 5 drops of blood to prove the walker's courage. Seol calmly cuts his hand, letting the crimson liquid fall into the stone receptacle, sealing the pact with the ruin. The ancient mechanism grinds, and heavy gears begin to turn, awakening after centuries of absolute deadly silence. He gazes down the newly opened path with a cold stare, ready to face whatever lurks within. Kang Seol knows his veteran gamer intuition was right, and the secrets of the ruins now belong to him alone. In the chat, silence reigns as he passes without killing anyone, shattering every rule others followed. He steps into the deep darkness as the gate slams shut behind him, leaving the outside world behind for good. The system warns that pursuers are right behind him, but Seol is already a step ahead of any physical threat. Outside, dust billows with the furious arrival of the ruin hunters, led by the feared and ruthless Borgo. The group finally reaches the temple entrance, feeling the magical energy still emanating from the time-worn stones. Borgo leads the pack, axe in hand, catching the metallic scent of fresh blood Seol left on the altar. He calls for Kirjin, ordering the translator to use his skills to figure out how the snowman got in so fast. Borgo warns that if Kirjin tries to deceive him with lies, his own head will roll across the stone floor. The translator trembles in fear, approaching the altar and realizing something is vastly different from the translations he knew before. Kirjin looks at the bloodstains and realizes with horror that the boy discovered the sacred mechanism's true secret. He stammers, explaining to Borgo that Kujo's translation was wrong and that the snowman had realized the error. The boy's knowledge surpasses everything the experts believed they knew, leaving the gang in a state of shock. Silence grips the mercenary group as they process being outsmarted by a mere low-level summoner. No one can comprehend how a boy would possess such knowledge of ruins forgotten by most civilizations in this world. Borgo smiles grimly, feeling the hunt has become far more interesting now that he has a worthy opponent. He demands to know how the boy discovered it, but Kirjin has no answers, only able to tremble before the latent fury. The fear of death makes the translator accept any order, begging Borgo to believe in his usefulness to the group. Borgo decides they need to invade the ruins immediately and be faster than the snowman to secure the great treasure. The system warns Seol that Borgo's group has already entered the Hall of Restriction and that he is their primary target. A troop of warriors, armed to the teeth, advances through the dark corridors, thirsty for blood and the riches promised on the map. The sound of heavy boots against the stone floor announces that death is approaching with absurd speed. Seol stops before a new chamber and uses his keen perception to detect the deadly traps surrounding the entire place. He sees arrow slits in the side walls and inscriptions in an ancient language that defy the logic of common men. An image from the past shows that many others died attempting to cross this corridor, transformed into dust in mere seconds. The system offers action options, but Seol ignores the most obvious to focus on what his gamer memory taught him. The ancient inscription speaks of humility and gratitude before the grace of Ismokan, the god who governs this sanctuary of light. He remembers choosing this option in another life and knows that courtesy is the only key to survival. Seol kneels and begins to advance respectfully across the floor, keeping his head bowed before the divine power within. No arrows are fired, and he realizes his memory didn't fail, ensuring a safe passage through that field of death. The path is clear, and he moves forward without a scratch, while tension mounts in the corridors behind him. Soon after, Borgo's band arrives at the same chamber and stops before the darkness, unsure what to do now. Borgo realizes the boy has vanished from their sight again and demands Kirjin find an immediate solution to proceed. The translator grows desperate, noticing the snowman is nowhere to be found. Fearing he's already taken everything, the mercenaries begin to fight, accusing Kirjin of secretly working with Kujo to lead them all into a trap. A masked man observes the scene and declares that insects who try to treat gods as equals must die like trash. Tension explodes, and the warriors draw their weapons, ready to kill each other right there due to fear and greed. Borgo orders everyone to stop the ridiculous infighting and focus on the objective, maintaining his authority with a gaze of pure hatred. He asks how to cross the chamber, and Kirjin, terrified, tries to read the inscriptions to find a safe way out for the gang. The translator says they need to crawl across the floor as if praying, following the example of humility Seol left behind. Borgo detests the idea of humiliating himself, but the warning about the arrow traps is too real to ignore. One of the hunters warns that it's dangerous to advance without a test, but time is running out, and so is Borgo's patience. The mercenary chief knows the Snowman is already far ahead, and he cannot tolerate anyone being in front of him in this hunt. He decides to trust Kirjin one last time, hoping the translator isn't making a fatal mistake for all of them. The entire group begins to crawl across the dirty floor, looking like terrified worms facing the silent promise of a swift death. Humiliation burns in Borgo's chest as he crawls forward slowly, cursing the boy who forced them into this. Kirjin knows that if he fails now, Borgo will kill him slowly and painfully before the arrows even reach his body. Suddenly, a metallic click echoes in the corridor, and panic seizes the heart of every crawling man. Kirjin realizes too late that his interpretation of the room's midpoint was wrong, and despair takes over. The first scream of agony cuts through the air as an arrow pierces the shoulder of one of the unprotected warriors on the ground. It's the beginning of absolute chaos, and the mercenaries try to use their useless shields against a deadly rain of steel. The corridor turns into a human meat grinder as blood splatters onto the cold stone walls of the ancient sanctuary. The survivors try to run desperately, but the traps are too fast, leaving no room for errors or slow escapes. The massacre is complete, and the floor is covered with the bodies of those who dared to defy the ruins without proper knowledge. Borgo screams in hatred as he watches his group decimated, feeling the weight of failure in every arrow that misses his skin. He hears Snowman's name and realizes he's been thrown into a brilliant and cruel psychological trap by the young summoner. Kirjin lies dead in the middle of the corridor, and with him, all hope of translating the rest of the map is gone. Borgo starts to laugh like a maniac, finding Snowman a fascinating opponent, worthy of a special death at his hands. Meanwhile, Kang Seol continues to advance alone, feeling that the great power of the ruins is drawing ever closer to him. He grips his staff firmly, ignoring the screams echoing behind him, focused solely on his ultimate goal of ascension. Seol reaches the fifth gate, knowing that Ismokun's trials will become much more difficult from this point on. His perception ability reveals a secret room with no doors, where invisible traps await the slightest misstep of any foolish intruder. He smiles and prepares for the challenge, feeling adrenaline rush through his veins like ancient, powerful fire. The veteran player's confidence shines in his golden eyes as he analyzes every inch of that perilous place. He takes the first step, and the floor reacts with a bluish glow, indicating that the test of faith has truly begun. Seol advances with icy calm, ignoring the fear that would paralyze any other ordinary adventurer in that corridor of certain death. The inscription on the wall demands that he close his eyes and walk the distance from his own heart to the god. He hears voices promising infinite knowledge, but he knows that only he can hear the true whispers of the ancient gods. Closing his eyes in a place full of lethal traps is suicidal madness, but it's the only way to advance. He remembers that Ismokun's sacred number is 8, representing the mysterious deity who governs light in this sanctuary. The ancient priests walked exactly 8 steps, but there was a secret that fools never managed to understand about the rule. The crucial detail is that the step measurement depended on the walker's height, and the ancients were giants. Seol realizes that for his current height, 8 steps wouldn't be enough to cross the danger zone of the hidden traps. He decides to open his eyes only on the 9th step, defying common logic to survive where others have miserably failed in the past. The system confirms that he has passed through the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th gates, accumulating rewards and madness points along the way. A familiar voice surfaces in his mind, and he instantly recognizes it as Kodon's mysterious voice guiding him. His true identity has been exposed, and now he must run, for the time for explanations is over, and real danger has arrived. Seol walks with absolute determination, feeling that the last gate is just ahead, waiting for its rightful heir. Each step brings him closer to finding his second game piece, a secret that will change everything for him. He feels his heart pound as he realizes his strategy is working perfectly against all odds in this cruel world. He walks through the corridor illuminated by a magical light that seems to burn away the surrounding darkness with its divine purity. Seol mentally thanks the memories that brought him this far, allowing him to overcome obstacles that killed hundreds of hunters. The path ahead glows intensely, promising revelations that could shake the very foundations of the entire kingdom of Pandaea today. He wonders if the figure of Gilliac still awaits him in the final darkness of this simultaneously sacred and cursed temple. The name of the legendary ruin hunter, Gilliac, echoes in his mind like a promise of ancient power and tragedy. Gilliac was a giant of immense strength and a kind heart, but his life was cut short too soon by this very place. He loved life and plants, but the ruins became his final tomb after a journey of pure bravery. Seol knows that the traces of his first piece are still in the mountains, but Gilliac is here, at this 10th and final gate. He searches for any sign confirming the presence of his second piece, feeling the spiritual energy vibrate in the dense air. The secrets Gilliac couldn't take with him are guarded behind this 10th gate, waiting for someone worthy to inherit them. The place where they lived has transformed into a new world, and Seol is the bridge between past and future. He runs through the red brick corridor, feeling the air grow lighter as the light gradually increases. Finally, he reaches the 10th gate, the legendary Hall of Light, where Gilliac's ultimate fate was sealed forever. The room is vast and filled with gigantic mirrors that reflect a clarity impossible to be generated by common torches or fire. On the floor, he sees footprints that tell the story of a man who fought until his last breath. Seol follows the tracks, recounting each movement as if reliving the last desperate battle that took place in that sacred hall. The number 7 appears again as a warning that the journey of those who came before ended in pain and silence. He finds the remains of adventurers who did not possess the same luck or knowledge to overcome Ismokan's challenges. The bearded warrior led his group with hope, unaware that fate would be cruel to all of them on that fateful day. Seol remembers Kurjin's words about the necessary steps and realizes how ignorance led to the demise of so many strong men. An image of fury and scars appears in his mind, indicating that the enemy is closer than he imagines. The system warns that the merging of worlds is scheduled for today, and Snowman's time to act is rapidly running out. He enters the heart of the Hall of Light and feels a spiritual pressure that almost forces him to kneel once more. A strange, familiar sensation washes over him, confirming that the second piece is now just a few meters away. Seol knows that what he finds here will change his strength forever, transforming him into the most dangerous player in the entire system. He sees a skeleton sitting alone against the wall, still clad in the clothes of a ruin hunter from bygone eras. Suddenly, a searing pain explodes in his head, and he collapses to the ground, clutching his face with trembling hands. Seol screams as Gilliac's memories invade his mind, forcing him to witness the truth behind the hero's fall. He sees Gilliac flexing his muscles and laughing, a man who believed himself unbeatable against any challenge or monster that existed. The giant warns his companions never to forget him, for he would be the one to unravel all the mysteries of the ancient ruins. Gilliac swore he would unearth every secret of this world, but arrogance blinds even the strongest warriors who walk the earth. The vision shifts to the moment of disaster, and Seol feels the agony of the poison coursing through the fallen giant's veins. Gilliac's scream of agony echoes through the hall as he watches his friends die one by one in the treacherous traps. He pleads for Jaren to hold his hand and not give up, but death has already claimed almost everyone on that cursed expedition. The rule of 8 steps was his undoing, for he failed to grasp the difference in scale required to survive there. Gilliac believed that closing his eyes was the most incredible solution, a demonstration of faith that ultimately became his own executioner. He underestimated the true danger, and now pays the eternal price, sitting alone in a hall that should have been his glory. The silence that followed the deaths of his friends was the greatest suffering Gilliac carried until his last moment. He realized the arrow in his chest was poisoned, taking his life inch by inch as he still tried to fight. Even so, he managed to drag himself to the final gate, proving his will was stronger than impending death itself. Looking at the mural on the ceiling, he had a final revelation about the divine nature of the god Ismokan and light. The mirror awakened for him in the end, but it was too late for the giant whose soul was already departing. Ismokan controls light and truth, and Gilliac finally understood that the secret lay in the reflection of his pure soul. He died with a smile, leaving behind the legacy that Seol now carries on his shoulders as the new heir. Seol returns to his senses and faces Gileak's skeleton with profound respect, vowing to finish what he started. The system warns that madness will be used to strengthen the gods, and Seol knows he must prevent this wicked plan. In the chat, confusion reigns about how a simple summoner obtained the legendary Ruin Predator trait so early. Seol whispers that he arrived late, but Gileak's wish will be fulfilled by his hands and his unwavering will. He studies the giant door and realizes it's merely a visual distraction to deter the greedy and the impure. Gileak left detailed clues for the next piece, ensuring the cycle of knowledge wouldn't be broken by mere greedy mercenaries. Seol accepts his role as the legitimate successor, feeling the detection ability flow throughout his entire being right now. The system asks how he wishes to adjust the mirrors surrounding the room, offering the chance to open the true path. The masked Snowman appears in his mind and warns that the only salvation for his race is hidden beyond this gate. The key lies in the 4 monumental mirrors that must be perfectly aligned with the celestial light descending from above. He focuses on the image of the goddess on the ceiling, the last detail Gileak observed before departing for the eternal world. Seol begins to move the heavy mechanisms with a strength he didn't even know his young body possessed. The mirrors begin to reflect a beam of golden light that illuminates the entire hall with a divine and terrifying splendor. He adjusts all the mirrors towards the ceiling, concentrating the luminous energy into a single central point above his head. He invokes Ismokan's name, demanding that the god of light acknowledge his presence and his just claim to power. Seol offers the light of nature as the final tribute required to open the doors of the sacred and secret sanctuary. He commands the path to open, acting as the true master of the ruins he was born to be in this game. A thunderous roar echoes and the ground begins to tremble, while magical symbols glow with an intensity that almost blinds the boy. The sound of colossal gears turning indicates that Ismokan's final secret has finally been unlocked after millennia of waiting. Ascension is the prize everyone failed to seize, but Seol is ready to write a new history within these ruins. He walks confidently towards the opening gate, feeling the sanctuary's energy welcome him like an heir. The entrance reveals a magnificent corridor, far beyond what any map or legend could ever describe to ordinary men. He places his hand on the structure and pushes, feeling a direct connection with the god of light through physical touch. A radiant glow spreads throughout the corridor, indicating that the sanctuary has accepted his presence and his pure iron will. Seol sees a statue of a woman at the end of the hall, a divine representation emanating overwhelming peace and power. The statue's voice echoes softly, welcoming the stranger who successfully traversed the Hall of Restriction. He has finally arrived at Ismokan's heart, the place where desires become reality for those with courage. Seol thanks in silence as the system prepares the rewards for overcoming all the deadly challenges of that epic journey. The statue begins to transform, and a cascade of gold coins and rare items appears before his eyes. He is warned about the danger of speaking with gods, but Seol is focused only on his own constant evolution. Legendary weapons and invaluable treasures fall at his feet, transforming his status from a mere summoner into something far greater. One final choice must be made, and the system demands he choose carefully not to seal his fate. Kang Seol faces the options with a determined gaze, knowing this is only the beginning of his true legendary ascent. Gold and relics shimmer before him, but true power is never solely in what common eyes can perceive. He whispers to himself that the choice is difficult, and he doesn't know which item is most needed now. The system glows and announces a reward from a previous adventure, boosting the boy's perception for 10 full minutes. Suddenly, the world shifts, and rare items begin to reveal stories and secrets that lay hidden beneath the dust. Seol ignores the obvious advice to focus on price and decides that Karuna's equipment might not be ideal. His hand moves with absolute certainty towards an object that seems simple, yet emanates a profound energy. He ignores the golden treasures and picks up a piece of dark cloth, while the system's voices question his sanity. The statue asks if the decision is final, and Seol replies with a short, dry, confident yes. He chooses the eye patch of perception, a treasure rank item that promises to reveal everything that was previously invisible. Seol knows that the eyes of perception perfectly complement his playstyle and the knowledge he carries. The statue asks if he desires anything else, and the boy declines, satisfied with the prize he has just claimed. The divine entity proclaims that Izmokan brings prosperity only to those who know how to practice moderation in their lives. An additional reward chest bursts from the ground with a thud, revealing that Seol's moderation has finally been rewarded. He watches the gold coins appearing, but senses something far deeper and more perilous unfolding in this place. The boy's eyes widen as he realizes that the true test of endurance is about to begin right before him. The time has come to wield his newly acquired power, and he positions the eye patch to activate his new worldview. Pain explodes in his head as if 1,000 fiery needles were piercing his nerves, and he screams in desperation. Seol's cry of agony echoes through the sanctuary walls as the awakening process consumes his last vestiges of strength. He collapses to his knees, cursing the intensity of this transformation that feels like it's burning his very being. Sweat and tears mingle as he admits he never imagined opening his new eyes would bring such immense suffering. The heat is unbearable. It feels as if his body is being forged in a divine furnace to withstand the new power. Finally, the system confirms that the eyes of perception have been opened, and the world will never be the same. His vision instantly sharpens, and the attributes of elite monsters begin to appear, floating in the air like digital phantoms. A golden light emanates from his hands, and he feels that the randomness of fate can no longer touch him here. Despite the terrible pain, Seol smiles, realizing he can now avoid traps that would kill any other ordinary adventurer. His gaze becomes cold and analytical, focused entirely on the dark corridor stretching beyond the grand hall. The sound of metal dragging on the floor indicates that he isn't the only one left within these accursed ruins. Borio emerges from the shadows, wielding a giant axe and a sadistic smile that reveals his intent to kill the boy. The mercenary calls Seol a rat and says he's finally found him, ready to collect an ancient blood debt. Seol remains calm and asks where the other group members are, but Boreo's answer is a threat. Boreo says he should be worried about his own life and demands answers before delivering the final blow. The mercenary changes his mind, stating he'd prefer to cut the boy into pieces and scatter them across the battlefield. Seol ignores the threat and asks if it's just the two of them, calling the giant an idiot and turning the interrogation around. The tension in the air is almost solid as the boy prepares his next strategic move against his strongest opponent. Boreo's subordinate watches the scene in fear, unaware that his leader has completely lost his mind here. Boreo stares at the walls, lost in the sight of the immense amount of treasures shimmering within the sacred sanctuary. The ally tries to warn about the glow on the walls, but Boreo brutally attacks him, leaving the man in shock. Boreo orders him to take his hands off the jewels and madly proclaims that everything in this place belongs only to him. Seol observes the betrayal and comments that it's a miracle two such greedy individuals managed to get this far. The mercenary tells the boy to shut up and swears he'll take all the treasures along with his life. Boreo starts laughing hysterically as he grabs the gold pieces, screaming that everything is his by right. The treasures begin to stick to the mercenary's body as if alive, forming an armor of pure greed. He feels an overwhelming power flowing through his veins and believes he has become invincible by donning Izmokan's relics. With a roar, Boreo promises to crush Seol until he can no longer breathe under the weight of his new power. The protagonist observes the scene with disdain and realizes that the mercenary's end has already been sealed by the sanctuary itself. Seol asks if no one warned the giant about the true name of that place and what happens to the greedy ones there. The shadow behind the boy begins to grow and take on a demonic form as the mercenary continues to laugh loudly. The demon statue comes to life and roars that greedy people have no place on that sacred ground and will be punished. Boreo retorts that greed is what drives him and that no one in the world has the power to punish him now. The mercenary's scream turns into a roar of pain as Izmokan's spirit begins to drain his life. His body writhes inhumanly as the divine punishment begins to transform his flesh into something bizarre. Red light consumes the environment, and malevolent energy spreads, proving that moderation was the only true salvation. Seol watches everything without blinking, his golden eyes shining intensely through the power of his new heightened perception. He raises his hand and feels that the spectacle of horrors is only just beginning for the traitor who dared to follow him. The boy whispers that the real game has begun and prepares to face what remains of Boreo's soul. The mercenary tries to fight the possession, but his voice is no longer human and his movements are erratic. The system reports that all of Boreo's attributes have fallen by half and that Ismokan has stripped him of all his freedom. He has become a puppet in the hands of the god of light, a marionette condemned to serve as guardian of the ruins. The physical transformation is complete, and what was once a man is now merely a cocoon of unstable energy. An explosion of dust and light blinds the surroundings as the final battle within the sanctuary takes on epic proportions. Seol adjusts his posture and focuses on the interface that reveals the weak points of the creature Boreo has now become. Thanks to his eyes of perception, he can see the flow of mana and predict every lethal move of the possessed enemy. The air grows heavy and the smell of ozone fills the hall as the gears of destiny turn far too quickly. The monster roars one last time, charging with a bloodlust that ignores any instinct of human self-preservation. Seol dodges with surgical precision, moving as if dancing between the enraged beast's desperate attacks. Each strike of Boreo's axe cracks the stone floor, but the boy always seems to be one step ahead. Sweat streams down the protagonist's face, but his heart beats slowly and controlled throughout the entire combat. The creature pauses for a second, confused by its inability to hit a target that appears so fragile and small. Seol faces the monster and says he's nothing more than a man who can't even control his own body. The interface reveals that he now faces the spirit of Ismokan, a rare rank entity bound to the remains of Borgo. Dark energy overflows from the armor, and the enemy prepares an area attack that could destroy the entire sanctuary. The spirit roars through Boreo's mouth that all of this is the boy's fault, and he will pay dearly. He swears he will kill Seol at any cost, even if it means destroying his own existence in the final process. A massive shadow emerges behind the monster, revealing the true scale of the power being manipulated within. Boreo begs to be released as his flesh is torn by invisible chains binding him to the sacred ground. Seol replies with deadly coldness that he has no intention of releasing him and that his fate is already sealed. The physical clash resumes with brutal violence, making the temple columns tremble under the impact of the energies. The possessed warrior falls to his knees once more, his body reaching the absolute limit of what a human can endure. An authoritative voice commands him to rise, and surprise is etched across the deformed face of the fallen mercenary. Seol coughs blood from the excessive effort, but keeps his gaze fixed on the enemy, who refuses to truly die. Boreo stammers that he is invincible and must protect his treasures at all costs from that black-cloaked intruder. Jhamad appears as an unstoppable blur and promises to tear the mercenary to shreds until he can no longer stand. The clash between the orc and the possessed warrior creates a shockwave that throws Seol against the wall. Jhamad demonstrates a physical strength that defies logic, fending off the giant axe's attacks with his bare hands. Seol observes the fight and realizes that the orc is not a common enemy, but an ally of overwhelming power. The system warns that Boreo is using his treasure creation ability to desperately try to turn the tide now. The boy shouts a warning of danger, but Jhamad ignores it, charging forward with a savage, relentless fury. The mercenary lets out a pained groan as the orc's fist connects with his armor, denting the divine metal. The impact is so immense that the spirit within Boreo begins to waver, losing control over his very flesh. Jhamad ridicules the enemy's appearance, declaring the sight utterly pathetic for a warrior of his caliber. Blood stains the golden floor as the struggle transforms into a slow, agonizing execution before their very eyes. The orc asserts that foolish people are greedy because they've never known the true fear that dwells in the deep shadows. He reveals that his body, unlike Boreo's, courses with a real, divine fury when provoked in battle. The mercenary attempts one last desperate strike, but Jhamad merely watches with a gaze of utter contempt for his futile effort. Jhamad remarks that every human he's encountered has begged for their life, and Boreo will be no exception. The orc's voice darkens as he prepares the final blow, poised to end this cycle of greed. Boreo screams for him to die, but his ability fails miserably against the iron will of his savage opponent. Jhamad calls the mercenary insignificant and unleashes a punch that tears through his magical defense as if it were thin paper. Boreo's final scream is swallowed by the sound of shattering bones, and the spirit of Ismokan abandons his body. The mercenary questions how a wild troll could be so strong, and the orc replies that strength is absolute. Seol comments that the world fails to grasp the true nature of power, but that's precisely what makes everything so interesting. Boreo tries to speak, but Jhamad silences him with a definitive strike that tragically ends his journey. Seol shouts Jhamad's name as the mercenary is flung away like a lifeless rag doll. Mysterious figures observe from afar, commenting that the outcome is irrelevant, for the grander plan continues to unfold. Boreo's body hits the ground with a dull thud, and silence finally returns to the great sanctuary of light. The mercenary opens his eyes for a second, confused and feeling life drain away through his trembling, cold fingers. He admits he's suffering and asks Seol if he still finds his plight amusing or entertaining. Boreo pleads for them to stop, admitting his fear and that he doesn't want to face the end alone. Jhamad stares at the fallen enemy, stating simply that those were the last words of a small, weak man. The mercenary gazes at the colossal hand drawing near, feeling terror consume him whole. He tries to deny reality, but darkness begins to shroud his vision as consciousness fades forever into the void. The final voice whispers that fear was the only true thing left in the soul of that ruin hunter. The system confirms that Borgo's spirit has been eliminated, bestowing upon Seol the title of Spirit Executor. Jhamad stands tall amidst the wreckage, emanating an aura of power that makes the very air vibrate around him. The orc asks if it's time to reap the madness, gazing at the masked figures emerging from the shadows of the place. Seol observes the scene, admitting that Jhamad's power has surpassed all his initial expectations for this mission. A divine light descends upon the sanctuary, and Ismokan's gift begins to manifest for the true victors. The system processes the best possible reward, and the brilliance blinds Seol for a few moments during the prize verification. The boy levels up multiple times, acquiring attribute points, in addition to a purified, top-tier armor. A divine voice whispers that Seol's unwavering will shall be what guides him through the chaos of this world. Iliak's Ruin Predator ability is activated, granting extra rewards that no other player has ever managed to obtain before. The system proclaims that he is like steel, with a cold heart of fire that will shine brightly throughout Pandaea. The light spreads, and Seol receives the command not to anchor himself, but rather to spread his radiance across the world. He obtains the Fists of the Mountain, a divine rank item, and the title of Ismokan's Mighty Warrior. Seol notices that Jhamad hesitates to receive the blessing of an unknown god, maintaining his loyalty to the ancient dragon Tancred. A masked man appears and salutes the gods, observing the protagonist's success with a malicious, hidden interest. Seol analyzes the items and laments that Boreo's helmet was destroyed, but keeps the purified armor with him. He reflects on the hierarchy of equipment in Pandaea, knowing that treasure rank items are extremely rare in the early stages. As a sorcerer, he cannot wear heavy armor, so he decides that the best fate for the item is for someone else. The boy focuses on the last item on the list, feeling that it will be the tool that defines his next step. The Fists of the Mountain grant extra damage and the ability to strengthen an ally, which is an immense strategic advantage. Seol celebrates the new titles and incredible rewards, knowing that he is now on an entirely different level of power. He admits that trusting his instinct and waiting for Boreo's arrival was the master move of that entire adventure. The system keeps his information private, but reveals that his score reached nearly 600,000 points, a new record. In the Global Adventurer ranking, Seol's private name appears in first place, leaving all other players in shock. The world outside begins to buzz with rumors about this mysterious new player who has surpassed all known limits. Seol walks back to the city in silence, noticing how strangely calm the day seems after so much chaos and bloodshed. He decides it's time to return home and process everything he learned within that hellish and divine dungeon. The boy's silhouette vanishes between the buildings as he keeps his identity hidden beneath the cloak he wears on his back. Suddenly, he stops, sensing a familiar and shadowy presence observing him from somewhere in the city's narrow alleyways. Seol wonders if they are members of the Predator Guild, remembering that the 4 companions who entered with him are dead. He thinks perhaps the news of their death spread quickly, but soon discards that idea from his analytical mind. The boy prepares for an ambush and feels the adrenaline surge again as he scans every dark corner around him. A young man in light armor appears, running, looking desperate and exhausted, as if fleeing a real nightmare. The stranger stops in front of Seol, panting, revealing a face marked by extreme fatigue and profound fear. He lets out a sigh of relief upon finding the protagonist, but his voice fails, and he can barely utter the words. Seol stares at him with his golden eyes and directly asks why the man was following him so persistently. The young man doesn't answer immediately, but Seol warns that there are other ways to uncover the truth if he remains silent. The stranger admits he knows who the protagonist is and that he's been waiting for him since the rankings changed. Seol questions what exactly he knows, and the young man affirms he's certain Seol is the private player. He explains that Seol was the only one who passed through the entrance at the exact moment the world rankings were updated. The boy realizes the stranger doesn't seem to have ill intentions and asks the real reason for such a long wait there. The young man falls to his knees and lets out a groan of pain, revealing he's suffering from a very severe physical condition. He begs for help and asks Seol to hear his tragic story before making any decisions about him. The two move to a more secluded spot to talk without attracting the unwanted attention of other guild-curious onlookers. Night falls over the city, and the atmosphere becomes even more tense as the secret begins to unravel. Sitting in a tavern, Seol notices the young man's hand and realizes there's something terribly wrong with his skin. The young man says he encountered a ghost and was cursed, but Seol suspects that Mark is something far worse. He begins to talk about his two siblings and mentions that his older sister was the one who took care of everything before. With tears in his eyes, he reveals that his sister tragically died during their second adventure. The image of a mountain flashes in the young man's mind, bringing back memories of a day he wished to forget. He describes how there were too many trolls and that his sister worked hard to protect him until her last second of life. The young man wonders how he's still alive, as the memories of her sacrifice torture his mind every single day. He narrates the exact moment Han Se-byuk fell from a cliff, and he tried to hold her with all his strength. His sister screamed for him to let go, warning him that if he kept holding on, they would both plunge to certain death in the abyss. The young Yeom-young ends the story by shouting his sister's name, while Seol realizes this tragedy hides a greater secret. She looks at her brother one last time with a sorrowful smile that would break anyone's heart. "I loved her so much," the young man whispers, recalling her final request. "I'll leave no ill with you." In that fateful moment, the rope of life snapped, and his destiny changed forever. A warning appears. You have acquired the ghost hand, and now his dead sister appears in his dreams every night. The young man cries as he confesses the nightmare. "She tells me to save her. She begs for help." Seol analyzes coldly. This unexpected accident gave the boy a rare constitution. It's not a simple curse. Yeom-young takes a deep breath, relieved he's not dying, but the pain in his soul is still visible in his eyes. Unfortunately, this shadowy hand is useless unless a high priest performs a heavy purification ritual. If he can control this power, the ghost hand will be the greatest weapon he's ever wielded. Seol asks if he wants his normal hand back, and the boy denies it. "It's my fault and my regret." The real problem is his younger sister, who joined a dangerous guild and vanished off the map. He asks if Seol knows the Justice Guild, but the protagonist couldn't care less about irrelevant names. It's an old guild that attracted many with its fame, but everything they say about their leader is a lie. Inside, those who disagree with the officials feel the blade's weight. Justice is merely a facade for executioners. Seol tries to dismiss it as a rumor, but Yeom-young confirms he witnessed the horror firsthand through his own sister. Noel is in real danger, and the desperate brother feels time slipping through his fingers. His gaze is that of someone who has already lost everything and cannot fail his family again. Seol maintains his icy demeanor. "Even if it's true, I don't see why I should help you." The boy freezes, unable to understand how someone so powerful could be so indifferent to the suffering of others. "I am not a disciple of justice," Seol replies, making it clear he doesn't work for free for anyone. Everyone has their own motives in this dog-eat-dog world, and charity isn't part of the protagonist's vocabulary. Yeom-young explodes in fury and frustration. "Why not? Why won't you help if you're so strong?" He screams that Seol's points are double the second-place holders. He could crush any guild alone. If Seol wanted to, saving that girl would be as easy as breathing, but he merely observes the young man's outburst. The answer comes like a slap. I didn't get strong to save those who sit around waiting for miracles. The boy collapses upon hearing that the beings in his dreams were real gods observing his weakness. Seol turns his back. You have to save your sister. I can't carry the world on my shoulders. He walks away, leaving the broken young man on the tavern floor, alone with his own powerlessness. Before leaving, Seol warns, overcome your guilt if you want a chance, for your hand is not a burden. It's the end of the conversation. Seol's words echo in the heavy silence left behind. In the global chat, the insane donations begin. Snowman is cold-blooded, but snowmen are icy, aren't they? Viewers are split between those who think Seol is a monster and those who agree that everyone looks out for themselves. The protagonist ignores the chatter. In the real world, people should worry about their own lives first. Danger is everywhere, and Seol's time is too valuable to be wasted on strangers. Still, he knows that the Phantom Hand is the key for the boy to solve everything on his own. And if Yeomyoung survives, this power could be very useful for Seol's future plans. He stops and thinks for a second. Maybe giving a discreet nudge isn't such a bad idea. Suddenly, the atmosphere changes. He enters a place so dark that even his golden eyes can't see. If the boy manages to change without succumbing to despair, he will have a formidable ally in the future. He arrives at the Information Guild, a place where secrets are the most valuable currency of all. Seol requests everything about the Justice Guild, only the worst rumors, the truths no one dares to speak. The price is steep, 150 gold coins, but Seol pays without hesitation for the forbidden knowledge. He takes the scroll delivered by an invisible hand, feeling the weight of the information he purchased. Upon reading, Seol's expression hardens. Every word confirms what the boy said in the tavern. In fact, Yeomyoung's version was even mild compared to the real atrocities committed by that group. The plot thickens. The Predator Guild seems to be the true criminal mastermind behind everything. He throws another 100 coins on the table. He wants the dirt on Predator 2, and he wants it now. A system warning flashes. The world of eternity is 97% applied to reality. Seol questions why no one does anything against these criminals who act freely in the streets. The answer is cynical. Officials only interfere if ordinary civilians die. Among players, it's the law of the jungle. They believe that the transferred should create their own rules. In other words, chaos is permitted. Seol burns the paper. He perfectly understands that, in this new world, the only law is brute force. He decides to hire someone to watch the boy Yeomyoung for a week. His safety is now an investment. He hands over the target's details, moving the chess pieces while the flames consume the secret. The informant accepts the job for 20 coins, ensuring that not a single step of the boy will go unnoticed. The surveillance will be total, 24 hours a day, until Seol decides his next move. He returns to the training center of the Dark Prophets, where the air smells of forbidden magic. The hooded instructor recognizes him. The kind of dark magic Seol seeks isn't for just anyone. A menu of options appears before him, offering new paths of power that require skill points. The system announces total integration. Welcome to Pandia. The world of eternity has become your sole reality. Seol searches for Chow, the shadow summoner, but discovers she disappeared in a dangerous zone. Nobira is a den of bandits, and the fact that a master like her has vanished is a terrible sign. He realizes this is a hidden awakening event that was only supposed to happen much later in the game. If he ignores it now, he might lose the chance to evolve his class to the supreme level in the future. He accepts the search quest, and the system confirms the activation of the hidden adventure, the Lost Summoner. The objective is clear. Find traces of Chow in Nobira before darkness swallows her whole. But before leaving, Seol needs more immediate power. He asks to enhance his basic abilities. He knows he got sidetracked by the secondary quest, but his main focus is still total evolution. With 4 skill points saved, he looks at his talent tree, shining like a constellation. The choice is obvious. He invests everything in shadow summoning, his signature ability, and greatest trump card. The upgrade is massive. Now he can maintain 2 active shadows at the same time with superior stats. He feels mana flow with greater intensity. Pandia is no longer a game, it's his new hunting ground. With Karuna and Jhamad fighting side by side, Seol has officially become a one-man army. He remembers Yeomyung's shouts about being strong. Now he truly is on another level of existence. Kongori has nothing left to offer. The rewards here are too small for his ambition. After I settle scores with the Predator Guild, I'm leaving here, he decides. Meanwhile, at the villain's headquarters, the mood is funereal. 4 members were killed trying to get Seol. The henchman trembles as he reports the failure. The bastard they underestimated was a true executioner. Freder, the Predator Guildmaster, listens to everything with a calm that precedes the bloodstorm. He asks the target's name again, and the answer comes laden with fear. His name was Snowman. Freder lets out a dry laugh. He heard the guy seemed like a harmless nerd at first. But what kind of monster hides behind that appearance to annihilate 4 experienced warriors alone? The henchman suggests sending an elite squad to finish the job, but Freder has other plans. He crushes his cigar in the ashtray. You idiot! Keep an eye on him so he doesn't escape the city, that's all. Freder knows there's an order to everything. Killing Seol now in a conspicuous way would ruin his political alliance. The alliance with Justice is just a game of interests where no one truly trusts anyone. He plans to use Wancheol's weakness to expand his dirty business and completely dominate Kongori. The final plan is terrible. Absorb Justice, dominate the other guilds, and start human trafficking. In this lawless world, Freder feels at home. He can stab anyone he wants without fearing punishment. For him, violence is the only language that matters, and whoever masters it best sits on the throne. He boasts of being second in the private ranking, but hatred boils as he remembers there's one above him. A subordinate rushes in, screaming for the master with utmost urgency in his tone of voice. Wancheol, the leader of Justice, is begging for immediate help due to an unexpected attack. Freder gets irritated by the confusion. Some madman invaded the enemy guild's headquarters alone and is causing chaos. Alone? Freder questions, incredulous that anyone would have the courage to face an entire guild head-on. The invader is possessed by hatred, taking down guards while screaming for his missing sister's whereabouts. He advances like a hurricane of blades and despair, ignoring the wounds on his own body. "No will!" he roars, his scream echoing through the blood-stained corridors of the Justice Guild. The protagonist watches from afar, feeling the vibration of the battle that began to tear apart the city's peace. He sees the glimmer of divine light descending upon the world, marking the beginning of the era of turbulence. Reality is fragmenting before his eyes, revealing the true face of this new universe. Now there's no doubt left. He truly was dragged into the game that haunted his dreams. Thousands of silhouettes appear around. Everyone on Earth has been pulled into this interdimensional carnage. The shock is widespread. The world they knew is over, merging with the brutal fantasy of Pandia. Kodam appears with an enigmatic smile, confirming that the world fusion was today's inevitable destiny. The legends were real and the time of lies is over. Survival is now everyone's sole objective. Soleil feels the adrenaline boil. If the game wasn't a dream, then his death will also be very real. He clenches his fists, remembering every strategic detail he accumulated during years of gaming. A masked being insults him, calling him an insect, who dares to try and climb the heavens forbidden to humans. Seol stares at the divinity without backing down an inch. "I'm an insect? Just because I faced you as an equal?" He spits the words in the god's face. You were deceived by this insect and still applauded his victory. Fury overflows. They discarded him as soon as they discovered his humanity, as if his life was worth nothing. Memories of the orphanage, loneliness, and the god's betrayal burn like embers in his chest. If his only sin was being born human, then he has nothing left to lose in this holy war. Seol shows his teeth in a predatory smile. I have every right to be furious with gods who are trash. He's going to do what he's done best for 17 years, play the game better than any of these beings. Loading complete. Character creation ended, and Seol chose to become Peace 31. He is reborn in the shadows, with black hair and golden eyes that see the system's hidden truth. He will climb step by step until he reaches the top and tears these gods from their golden thrones. The system announces, Snowman, the Shadow Summoner, has officially entered Pandia to ascend. The World of Eternity plays out like a tabletop RPG, and Seol has already played 30 matches before this one. He knows that character creation dictates destiny, just like the parents you're born to. The risk is absolute. If he dies here, there's no reset button to save him from the abyss. He analyzes the possible classes: mage, hermit, mechanic, but he seeks something no one else desires. Playing in a group was always a hindrance. This time, he'll walk the solitary path to divinity. He chooses Summoner with shadow attributes, focusing everything on wisdom and intuition to see the unseen. In the game, this combination was deemed weak, but no one knew how these ignored powers could multiply. He types in his code name with the resolve of one about to change the world's history. Snowman is born under the sign of shadows, ready to flip the board upside down. The first adventure is random, Moonlight Dance, and he has only 6 minutes to prepare for the chaos. The scene emerges, the Forgotten Moon Ruins, a place that smells of death and ancient traps. Seol remembers this stage was for novices to adjust, but reality is far more cruel. The name is misleading, the difficulty is infernal, and traps drain his life with every wrong step. The place is infested with dangers, and he has no rogue skills to disarm anything with ease. This won't be easy at all, he murmurs, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. For a brief moment, he considers choosing a more resilient class for the start, but he quickly dismisses the doubt. He's now a piece on the board and must play with what he has. He reaches the entrance of the ruins, feeling his heart pound against his ribs for the first time. He tries to recall the correct sequence to open the stone gates without flying into the air. The silence of the place is oppressive, as if the ruins are waiting to devour another adventurer. Option windows float in the air. The system is providing hints, but Seol has already memorized the entire manual. He feels relieved to see that the official version hasn't changed much from the tests he ran. With a smirk, he realizes that his accumulated knowledge will be his greatest advantage against destiny. He grabs the levers, first the left, then the right, exactly as in the ancient records. Choosing the correct option is his specialty. He trusts his memory more than any weapon. Confidence shines in his golden eyes as the stone gears begin to grind. The gates slowly open, revealing the deep darkness that awaits him within. He enters without hesitation, each step echoing in the cold stone walls like a warning of death. What he sees ahead makes his breath catch for a split second. The challenge has begun. He observes the floor before him, covered in symbols that glow with a sinister, dangerous light. It's the first gate, a deadly puzzle where a single mistake means the end of the journey. He must step on the tiles in the exact order or be turned to dust before he can blink. His eyes analyze each design. He knows the system doesn't forgive failures, and death is final. If he missteps, a trap will activate, and there will be nowhere to run in this narrow corridor. His feet feel the cold floor, the tension is palpable, and the slightest slip could cost his soul. But Seol has played with every possible talent. He knows the hidden options no one else sees. He closes his eyes for a second, searching deep within his mind for the enigma's answer. The riddle emerges. The fierce lion does not retreat. Brute strength is the start of every journey. The docile sheep chooses to be last. Patience is the virtue that closes the cycle of life. The moon embraces all, but the jealous wolf relentlessly pursues the lion through the world's shadows. For many, it would be impossible, but for Seol, it's merely a word game: lion, wolf, moon, and sheep. It's not difficult, he whispers to himself. As long as I maintain the sequence, I'll get out of here unharmed. He takes a deep breath and prepares for the first step, his life hanging by a thread of memory. Sweat drips, but his hand is firm on his staff as he faces the gate's final challenge. He steps on the first tile, and the click echoes like thunder in the tomb's silence. The floor doesn't give way, and death doesn't come. Seol advances, but what awaits him in the next room will change everything. Another firm step, and the tension in the air escalates, as if the walls are observing the intruder. He pauses for a second and lets out a low sigh. All right, let's just get this over with now. The mechanism of the first room grinds as magical light begins to illuminate the path ahead. Seol looks at the floor, where the tile symbols glow with a treacherous, bluish energy. With the precision of one who knows the future, he steps exactly where the system demands for survival. Another dry click echoes through the hall as he completes the perfect sequence of rhythmic movements. He smirks, satisfied with his performance, and mutters, "That was almost too easy, seriously." The system flashes before him, announcing that the first gate has been cleared without taking any damage. He glances at the initial reward, but knows that stopping now would be a complete waste of time. The dark tunnel seems to swallow the light, but he decides, "I will continue. The greater prize awaits." The Forgotten Moon ruins try to teach about limits, but Seol didn't come here to be humble. He knows that greed kills the unprepared, but for him, risk is merely a calculation. "I know every detail of this adventure," he thinks. "There's no room for idiotic mistakes on my journey." Torches on the walls ignite on their own, revealing the winding path that leads to the second great challenge. The second gate is the true test of strength, where cheap tricks won't open the doors. Suddenly, he freezes as he looks down the corridor, wondering if the place was always this long. The system warns that the tile traps are now randomized, changing with each player attempt. Without engineering skills, Seol realizes he'll have to rely solely on his physical endurance and luck. He takes a deep breath, feeling sweat trickle down as his golden eyes analyze every color on the cold floor. His reflection in the polished marble looks like a stranger, someone scarred by battles of the past. He touches the mark on his neck, left by the lightning mask, a constant reminder that he survived. The image of his enemies calling him trash boils in his mind, fueling his will to win. The memory of pain drives him to take the first step into that minefield of colors and death. "Who knows?" he whispers into the darkness. "Maybe the sequence I remember will still work perfectly here." He lunges forward, his cloak flying as he tries to guess the hidden pattern of the tiles. The first leap is precise, but the ground trembles, indicating that the defense mechanism has been fully activated. Shadows on the walls seem to laugh at the audacity of the young man who dares to defy the logic of this game. Another quick movement, but the tile beneath his feet glows with an intense red of pure danger. He tries to balance as the ceiling begins to descend, threatening to crush everything in its path. A cry of agony echoes through the corridor as the first physical trap strikes the adventurer's body. Seol grinds his teeth, feeling the impact vibrate in his bones, but he refuses to fall now. The corridor seems endless, an infinite sequence of pain and frustrated attempts to find a way out. He wipes blood from his face and lets out a maniacal laugh. "How fun! This is how I like it." The entire room vibrates with the power of ancient machines protecting the pulsating heart of the ruins. Another burst of energy hits him, throwing his body against the cold, hard stone wall. He coughs, tasting metal in his mouth, but his eyes remain fixed on the final goal ahead. "You cruel bastards!" he shouts at the walls, as he tries to stand for the next deadly attempt. The pain is unbearable, and he feels like he's about to collapse, but the pattern slowly begins to reveal itself. He notices that the colors repeat, and realizes that red has been the correct answer so far. "Blue!" he shouts as he jumps, trying a new combination to break the infinite cycle of pure suffering. Unfortunately, blue was the wrong choice, and the system does not forgive the audacious player's failure. He knows that if he makes one more mistake, he will be crushed against the ceiling with no chance of escape. It's all or nothing. He decides to run desperately, ignoring the pain that consumes every fiber of his body. His feet pound the floor in a frantic rhythm as he crosses the corridor amidst flames and smoke. A voice in the system asks if he has finally understood the secret behind this endless torture. He smiles, for the answer was in front of him all along, hidden in the repetition of the steps. The correct tile repeats every 5 pieces, he mentally explains, as he now jumps with absolute confidence. Overcoming this trap becomes a trivial task once the code has finally been cracked by his mind. "Who made this lazy trap?" he complains, disappointed by the simplicity of the challenge after so much accumulated pain. The system announces that the silver chest has been upgraded to gold due to his incredible persistence. He stares at the message and ponders for a second whether he should end his victorious adventure right here. His hand clenches tightly, and he decides he cannot simply stop halfway. The system mocks him, calling him a masochist for wanting to continue even while covered in wounds and bruises. He ignores the AI's insults and walks towards the final door with heavy steps. Beyond those massive stone doors lies the moonlit plaza, the place where legend truly begins. Shining runes on the walls warn against arrogance, a message carved in stone for fools. Another warning demands that he know his place before challenging what lies beyond. Be humble, the last inscription reads, but humility was never one of our hero's virtues. He knows that cursed one will be waiting there, ready to test the limits of his weary soul. The system offers two choices: ignore the warnings and enter, or know his place and turn back now. He reaches for the portal and speaks with a firm voice, laden with determination. Never, not for a single second, have I chosen to turn back in my entire life. The door opens with a monumental boom, revealing a vast hall bathed in lunar light. Seol enters the chamber, his silhouette small against the grandeur of the divine architecture now surrounding him. The plaza's silence is broken only by the rhythmic sound of something metallic dragging across the floor. He notices a chilling gleam ahead and realizes the final challenge is closer than expected. From the shadows emerges a knight in full armor, emanating an aura of power that makes the air freeze. The warrior's helmet shines with an intense blue light as he observes the intruder who dared to enter. "How arrogant," the knight says. "You dare to set foot in this sacred place of the moon." The enemy draws a long sword that gleams with the power of the stars, ready for mortal combat. He makes a grim promise: "I will cut you down exactly where you stand, without any mercy." Seol merely smiles, tightens his staff, and quietly replies, "I've been waiting for this for a while." The title appears above the enemy: Karuna, the Moonlight Knight, one of the most feared bosses in the game. Karuna charges like a blue lightning bolt, forcing Seol to retreat desperately to avoid being sliced in half. Reaching the safe zone seems impossible under the constant pressure of the Moonlight Knight's relentless attacks. A single blow from this moon-wreathed sword can burn the player's soul until nothing is left. This place is famous for killing overconfident adventurers with attack patterns that guarantee instant death. Seol looks at the ground and sees the colored tiles, realizing they are his only path to victory. He needs to use everything he learned during the journey to synchronize his movements with the boss. Karuna attacks with full force, but Seol dodges at the last second, leaping to the first tactical point. "The first tile is the red lion," he shouts, activating the first phase of his combat strategy. Each tile color has a different effect on the overwhelming power emanating from the enemy's armor. Red decreases the moonlight's intensity on the sword, making Karuna move much slower. Without wasting time, he jumps to the red wolf and then to the red moon in sequence. Karuna tries to react, but his movements are heavy, as if he's fighting underwater. He's slowing down, Seol realizes, seeing the knight's magical barrier begin to falter and tremble. The dance continues through the hall, with the hero leaping between symbols while avoiding the blade of death. He knows the slowness effect can only stack 3 times before losing its utility in combat. "Now it's the Black Sheep's turn," he announces, shifting the combat's focus to an all-out offense. Karuna receives the impact of a hidden mechanism that emerges from the ground, dealing real damage to his armor. The black tiles are the only ones capable of harming the knight, but they come with a very high risk. Every time he takes damage, the moonlight around him strengthens, requiring new steps on the red tiles. That's why Seol weakened the barrier before, but he realizes the enemy won't fall with just one hit. Karuna praises the intruder's skill, acknowledging that he is no ordinary low-level adventurer. Suddenly, the knight assumes a one-legged stance. It's the sign of the dreaded moonlight cut. Energy accumulates in Karuna's blade, creating a glow so bright it blinds for an instant. In that case, Seol thinks, preparing his riskiest maneuver to survive the fatal attack that's coming. The explosion of blue light consumes the entire room, a death pattern no one should be able to avoid. But to everyone's surprise, Seol remains alive, enveloped by a thin protective layer of lunar energy. He survived because he stepped on the blue tile at the exact moment, using the enemy's own strength as a shield. The world system announces that he is the first player in humanity to reach the final door of the temple. Karuna screams for justice as Seol returns to stepping on the red tiles to maintain control of the fight. The knight is furious, his attacks becoming more erratic as he tries to crush the young man at once. Seol maintains his icy calm, his eyes analyzing every frame of the opponent's movement with surgical precision. Somewhere, spectators discuss the moonlight dance strategy, shocked by what they're witnessing now. They recall that the perfect strategy only involved avoiding combat, never trying to take down the legendary Karuna. The black tile's damage is minor and still activates the boss's deadly blow, making everything extremely perilous. What's the point if the player can die, they question, not understanding that Seol is playing an entirely different game. Karuna roars with hatred, his armor beginning to crack under the pressure of the temple's defense mechanisms. Seol prepares for the final strike, his body acting purely on instinct and accumulated muscle memory. The knight raises his sword one last time, vowing to protect the moon's honor with his final breath. Don't stain the moonlight. The fallen warrior screams, as blue energy begins to devour his own body. Red, red. Seol steps heavily, ensuring the enemy's speed remains at the absolute minimum now. Damn you! Karuna bellows, as he feels the impact of the black tile that seals his fate once and for all. The fight is drawing to a close, and the tension in the room is so thick it can be cut. The knight is being consumed by the very light he swore to protect, his prowess desperately increasing at the end. The system warns that Karuna is being devoured by the moonlight, growing faster every 5 seconds that pass. If he only had one attack pattern, he wouldn't be the infamous monster that haunted so many experienced players. Die! He fires towards Seol with a speed that defies the laws of physics itself. The new moon step is the new pattern, a move so swift that eyes can barely keep up. But Seol already anticipated this and rushes to the red tiles, forcing the enemy to slow down again. He protects himself with the blue tiles whenever the fatal blow threatens to strike his unprotected mage heart. Let's just end this, Seol says, the fatigue finally starting to weigh on his broad shoulders. Karuna attempts one last effort to humiliate the intruder, but his strength is quickly draining away through the floor. The intruder advances, no longer fleeing, but facing the knight face to face for the first time here. The moonlight cut pattern returns, the last resort of a boss who refuses to accept defeat. Seol knows that a single mistake now means turning to ashes under the intense glow of the silver moon. He will dodge and use the tile trick to accumulate the final damage needed for victory. He lets out a brief laugh, feeling the adrenaline course through his veins like liquid fire during combat. It truly feels like a dance under the moonlight, he thinks, as his movements become fluid and almost artistic. The final blow connects. The sound of shattering metal echoes throughout the plaza like thunder. Seol stops, panting, watching the imposing figure of the knight begin to dissipate into particles of light. Karuna tries to call for his master, one last plea before his existence is erased from this world. He falls to his knees, the sword that once shone, now dull and broken on the marble floor. Silence returns to the forgotten moon ruins, but this time it is the silence of the hero's victory. Seol walks to the fallen body, his face showing no joy, only the coldness of a task completed. He observes Karuna's face, a warrior who fought with honor until the last second of life. "Master, I was unable to complete the mission," whispers the knight before closing his eyes. He apologizes to the void as his physical form disappears, leaving only ashes and memories behind. Seol lets out a breath, feeling the weight of the battle finally leave his tense and aching muscles. The system confirms he cleared the last encounter of the ruins and achieved what no one else could. Reward messages flood his vision, announcing the moon chest and Karuna's definitive defeat. Defeating him instead of just running away, he reflects. There's a much bigger reason I did this. The method was correct, and the reason will soon be revealed. He needed the soul of that legendary warrior. Seol extends his hand over Karuna's remains and commands with divine authority, "Serve me now." Black shadows begin to emanate from the ground, enveloping what remained of the knight in a sinister embrace. He activates shadow summoning, the skill that will transform his enemy into his most powerful and loyal ally. The darkness boils and takes form, recreating the imposing silhouette of the knight he had just defeated. "You have successfully summoned Karuna's shadow," the system announces, confirming the success of his risky gamble. Some abilities were not copied due to the low rank of the summoning, but Seol's wisdom compensates for this. The shadow retains only 20% of its original strength, but it is still a formidable force for battles. Seol's new soldier kneels before him, a figure of pure darkness with glowing violet eyes. He observes his new creation, satisfied to have an elite tank to protect him in future dungeons. The chat explodes with reactions, with donations and comments about the scent of victory emanating from the scene. New viewers pour into Snowman's room, utterly confused about how he managed to turn a boss into a shadow. Karuna's stats flash. Heroic rank level 1, boasting strength and constitution attributes that would make anyone green with envy. Not bad at all, Seol comments, seeing the immense growth potential of his new, powerful personal war tool. Beyond the shadow, he gains levels, skill points, and rare items like the Moonlight Sword. In the world of eternity, leveling up grants points to distribute and others that automatically increase by class. He decides to invest everything into wisdom, the primary focus that every elite shadow summoner must possess. He examines the Moonlight Sword, a rare item boasting massive damage and bonus effects during a starry night. Unlike other summoners, Seol's shadows can wield equipment and grow independently from him. He also obtained a staff that boosts his wisdom, an attribute many consider useless, but he knows better. The full moon staff gleams in his hands, absorbing the sacred energy emanating from the ancient ruins. Wisdom affects loyalty, charisma, and the chance to awaken skills in the shadows he now commands. Finally, he uncovers a moon seed, a mysterious item he knows exactly how to utilize later. But the ultimate prize is the title that shines before his eyes like a war trophy. The One Who Felled the Moons increases lunar attribute damage by 5%. An enhancement that will make Karuna even deadlier in his hands. He stows away his items and takes a deep breath, feeling that the preparation is complete and all is in order. It's time to advance without looking back, for the next challenge already awaits him in the shadows. The system announces the start of the second adventure, and the world around Seol begins to drastically shift. A blinding light swallows the reality of the ruins, transporting him to a new, nightmarish landscape. The ground trembles as the teleportation energy tears through space, leaving only the trace of a journey that has just begun. In the world of eternity, a terrifying tribe of trolls reigns over the perilous jagged peaks of the south. They are the Rockmaw tribe, infamous for cruel traditions and led by the relentless Jhamad, the tyrant. The mission is clear and merciless. Use any method to weaken the tribe and assassinate one or more of its leaders. The clock begins to tick, and the warning glows red. Failure means certain death for Seol. He gazes at the blue sky, maintaining the calm of one who has lived 1,000 battles and knows that fear is a luxury he doesn't possess. Seol calculates he'll have to reach the safe zone by early tomorrow, but time is his fiercest enemy now. What worries him most is that this mission involves the 5 brothers, a challenge he remembers as extremely volatile. The terrain is steep and treacherous, and any miscalculation in the jagged peaks could be his last step. He pauses for a second, observing the surroundings, sensing that something is terribly wrong. An adventure of this difficulty should demand a group of 5, yet Seol stands completely alone on this battlefield. With no time to lament his solitude, he grips his staff and decides he must move before the clock hits 0. The system confirms, just over 20 minutes remain for the impossible to be accomplished. Suddenly, he hears a sound, and his senses go on high alert as he stares into the dense vegetation. The horizon reveals the mountains that hide the troll village, a place where death is the only welcome. He reaches the guard post halfway up the mountain, and what he sees instantly chills his blood. A green flag flutters in the wind, a symbol carrying a grim meaning for those who know the lore of this world. Seol knows the Rockmaw tribe only raises this color on one specific, macabre occasion. It's the Harvest Festival, a ritual where they seek the blessing of an ancient dragon amidst blood and chaos. Despite the tribe's festive atmosphere, the ground around him tells a tale of massacre and utter despair. Several adventurers have been impaled on wooden stakes, their bodies left as a gruesome warning for any intruder. From the state of their clothes, Seol identifies that there was only one priest in that group, mercilessly decimated. 2 frontline warriors and an archer completed the party, all now serving as food for the crows. He reflects that it was a good group, and they could have won if they had the correct strategy that only he possesses. No use crying over spilled milk, he thinks, closing his eyes to focus only on what he can do now. If he wants to survive alone against an entire tribe, he'll have to employ a forbidden and extremely risky method. The system offers 3 options: attack the village directly, wait for night, or explore the surroundings for vital information. He moves stealthily through the bushes, each step calculated not to alert the predators lurking in the shadows. The first option is pure suicide, even with Karuna's shadow by his side to fight. He knows that directly attacking trolls on their home turf is the shortest path to becoming an impaled corpse. Waiting for night would grant the advantage of surprise, but being alone, the risk of being surrounded and devoured is still far too high. By elimination, the only real option is the third. Explore and find the element that can turn the tide in his favor. What he truly seeks are the tribe's exiles, those who guard the deepest secrets of the rock tusks. There are 5 peaks in these mountains, and the exiles usually hide in the most remote spots to escape Jhamad's fury. While other beings occupy the remaining peaks, the exiles play a supportive role that can change the adventure's fate. Seol knows that somewhere on the lowest peak lives a creature that was banished and holds a deadly grudge. He must be around here somewhere, Seol murmurs, his eyes of perception sweeping over every inch of the forest. The sound of bells begins to echo through the air, a metallic, strange melody that doesn't belong in that wild place. The noise is constant and serves as an improvised guide amidst the dense and dangerous vegetation. Seol realizes that the bells are used as an improvised alarm to protect whoever is living there. Bells? They make too much noise for their size, he observes, cautiously approaching the source of the sound. This confirms that the exile is in the area and that he is monitoring every move of anyone who dares to approach. A trembling voice laden with fear emerges from the shadows. It seems to be a human. A human has come here. Seol stops and asks firmly, "Who are you?" as the rustling of dry leaves reveals the creature's presence. The voice responds desperately, "Don't come here!" But Seol keeps advancing, assuring he means no harm. A deformed orc figure with enormous tusks appears, staring at Seol with a mix of hatred and absolute dread. The orc begs him not to approach, but Seol maintains a calm tone. "I didn't come here to harm you." "Liar! You were sent by the Rock Tusk tribe!" the orc shouts, as the system warns that the abandoned one is terrified. Seol ignores the threats and asks why he wants him to stay away, noticing that something is very wrong with the creature's skin. Silence falls between the two for a heavy instant, where only the sound of the orc's ragged breathing is heard. With a clinical gaze, Seol breaks the ice and asks the obvious, "Are you injured?" The orc recoils, shocked to see a human who didn't immediately attack him and who seemed to notice his pain. Seol knows he's sick, but he needs the orc himself to confess for the next phase of the plan to begin. The creature shows its festering hands and says, "See? These are wounds caused by a terrible disease consuming my flesh." He warns that it's contagious, and that it would be better for the human to leave before the same fate befalls him. "Don't make me even more miserable than I already am," whispers the abandoned one, his voice choked by years of suffering. Seol ignores the risk of infection and states that he wants to hear his story, leaving the orc incredulous at such madness. "Why would anyone want to hear about a sick monster like me?" the orc questions, as his defenses begin to crumble. Seol says he wants to hear everything, and the abandoned one finally lowers his guard, seeing sincerity in the young man in black's eyes. "We'd better talk inside," says the orc, motioning for Seol to follow him into his makeshift hut. He warns that he won't be responsible if Seol gets sick, and the young man just smirks. "That's fine by me." As the two enter, Snowman's chat explodes in panic, with viewers screaming that he's going to die from infection. "He's breaking all social distancing rules," comment the subscribers, as Seol ignores the digital chaos to focus on the mission. Inside the hut, Seol notices a stack of books and asks if the orc reads them, receiving a timid and surprised reply. The orc offers a bitter herbal tea, and Seol accepts, but makes it clear that his story is the absolute priority now. "In that case, may I tell you a bit about myself?" asks the troll, and Seol nods, ready to absorb every useful detail. He begins to recount that, in the past, a contagious disease descended from the mountains and ravaged the entire region. The plague passed from generation to generation, causing the trolls who suffered from it to die in constant agony. To stop the suffering, the ancestors of the Rock Tusk tribe created a cruel rule called the exile. They expelled the sick to distant places, abandoning them to their fate so that the village would remain clean. Seol asks if he is one of these exiles, but the orc shakes his head and reveals an even sadder truth. "My mother was the exile," he says, as an image from the past emerges in the suffering creature's mind. She was pregnant when she was expelled, and begged them to at least leave her child with the tribe, but the request was denied. The ancestors believed that the child would be born carrying the seed of destruction and death for all. The orc admits they might have been right, as he was born marked by the disease since his first breath. His mother died hating the tribe with all her might, wishing that all of them would simply disappear from the world. What exactly should disappear? Seol asks, delving deep into the psychology of that embittered being. The Rock Tusk tribe, the endemic disease. The orc takes a dramatic pause and lets out a heavy sigh. And myself, he concludes, showing that the weight of existence is greater than any physical wound. Seol asks if the disease is incurable, and the orc explains that he studied all those human books precisely to find a way out. He learned the language of men using magic and researched every detail of the plague consuming his bones. He reveals that only one ingredient is missing for the cure, the corpse finger mushroom, which only grows on the highest cliffs. The problem is, the disease has weakened his bones to such an extent that he can't even get close to the cliffs. Seol looks at him, making a decision that will change the course of his entire mountain adventure. I can find that mushroom for you. The young man proposes, leaving the orc utterly shocked and suspicious. He stares at the abandoned one with a piercing gaze, knowing this is the missing piece on his strategic board. He analyzes the situation, the tribe, the trolls, the guide, and all the problems arising from this unexpected encounter. Seol knows he can overcome any configuration of this world, no matter how difficult it was designed to be. Let's call this a trivial transaction, he says with a smile, determined to save the troll and gain an ally. He exits the hut and prepares for the physical challenge awaiting him on the dangerous mountain slopes. The terrain is unstable, and the wind howls fiercely, testing the nerves of anyone who dares to climb unprotected. He exhales, feeling the adrenaline surge as he gazes at the abyss opening beneath his feet. If you truly manage to get that mushroom, the orc's voice echoes from inside the hut like a vow of loyalty, then we will help you with anything you need in this accursed land. The system confirms the start of the Abandoned One's subquest, guaranteeing a high-level NPC assistant for the player. Seol remembers that this helper is one of the best in the game, acting with enthusiasm proportional to the friendship built. Every second is vital, but he knows the time invested in this quest isn't a waste, it's a wartime investment. With the Abandoned One by his side, Seol will have the power needed to turn around a seemingly hopeless situation. He begins the ascent, but the terrain's difficulty soon proves to be an almost impossible obstacle to overcome. Shit, he whispers, feeling sweat trickle down as he tries to find a secure foothold on the rock. In the chat, reactions are desperate. He's screwed. There's no way a mage can do that alone. Many believe he'll die right there, without the mushroom and without a future, questioning why he insisted on this mission. It's a shame. He had great skills, but he's dying in a ridiculous place, the pessimistic comments read. But it's at this moment of maximum tension that Seol's perception skill activates, illuminating the hidden path. He stops halfway up the slope, his eyes gleaming with the tactical analysis only he can process. Spectators think he's given up, but in reality, Seol is delving into memories from 17 years ago. He recalls the first piece he created, a character who was also a summoner and failed miserably. Back then, he was inexperienced and rushed to this very cliff with joy, without understanding the real danger. The young man he once was tried to do the impossible with passion, but without the necessary technique to win. He gave his best every day, but the lack of control over his own creation led him to disaster. He was simply too weak back then, without the wisdom that now overflows in his new life as Snowman. The image of past failure burns in his mind, serving as the perfect fuel for him not to err again. The cause of that ancient death was a simple stumble while searching for the mushroom for the exiled orc. Although it seems like a foolish reason, a summoner possesses neither strength nor agility, making physical searches a deadly nightmare. He understands now that attempting that with his physical body was an invitation to the grave, no matter the effort. His hands tremble slightly as he remembers the shock of seeing his piece destroyed by such a trivial and stupid mistake. This painful memory has always accompanied him, but today it will be used to ensure history doesn't repeat itself. Well, it seems I'll gain something thanks to this old trauma now, Seol reflects, watching the twilight. Suddenly, a strange sound echoes through the gorge, making him look up with curiosity and caution. Something is moving in the shadows of the rocks, something most players never had the patience to wait for. In the chat, the newcomers are disgusted by what they see, failing to understand that Seol was merely waiting for the right moment. He researched this quest extensively and knows that the corpse finger mushroom has a unique and bizarre characteristic. It only appears on the cliffs during the darkened hours, precisely when twilight begins to fall over the world. Seol positions himself, the reddish light of the setting sun reflecting in his determined and icy eyes. He won't use his body to get the item this time. He learned his lesson the hardest way possible. "Shadow Hand," he commands, and darkness begins to mold itself from his own arcane will. This is the basic ability of the Shadow Summoner, creating a physical limb made of pure shadow energy. Although it's difficult to control for the first time, he concentrates to make the hand reach the distant mushroom. Will it work, he wonders, as the black claw snakes across the stone wall like a serpent. He decides to concentrate all his power into a single, precise, and definitive movement, leaving no room for failure. The shadow hand approaches the rare ingredient, moving with a delicacy that contrasts with its sinister appearance. "As if I were holding an egg," he visualizes, controlling every inch of the force exerted by the shadow. With a firm and careful tug, he detaches the mushroom from the rock and brings it back to his physical hand. Relief washes over his body as he observes the item in his possession, but something else catches his eye. It worked! He celebrates internally as the chat goes wild with the success of the risky and brilliant maneuver. Suddenly, a strange glow emanates from inside a hollow tree near where the mushroom was. Did something just glimmer? He questions, letting his elite gamer curiosity guide his final steps. The system triggers an alert. The hidden quest ownerless pocket watch was unexpectedly activated by him. The item was abandoned on the lowest peak of the mountains long ago and seems to carry an ancient and important history. Seol notices the watch hanging from a branch, and if it hadn't been glowing, he would have walked right past it. Viewers laugh at his greed, calling him an item-hungry rookie, but Seol knows the value of what he found. No one in the chat seems to know what that watch is for. Not even those who consult game guides in real time. "Didn't anyone write about this?" they ask, confused, as Seol stores the mystery in his inventory with a smile. Back in the hut, Jhamad's cauldron bubbles over the fire, filling the air with dense, medicinal steam. The orc waits in absolute silence, hope battling despair within his tired, sick chest. His hands tremble as he watches the flames, remembering every unfulfilled promise of salvation. His diseased skin seems to burn under the firelight, reminding him that his time is rapidly running out. The elder orc bites his lips, the physical pain merely a reflection of the mental agony of being eternally rejected. "I don't want to see anything anymore!" he screams into the void, cursing the tribe and the very flesh that betrays him. He hates every member of the Rock-Tooth tribe, those who threw him away as if he were nothing but trash. He looks into the shadows and says they must all disappear, for the cure seems a distant and unattainable dream. Jhamad never had real hope that the disease would be cured. He merely studied to postpone the inevitable end. He began reading human books, simply as a way to understand the world that banished him without explanation. Thanks to his mother's tomes, he deciphered the letters and found the path to his own redemption amidst the dust. But the more knowledge he accumulated, the more he realized that death was winning the race against his life. "My end was coming faster than my salvation," he reflects, feeling his strength slowly abandon him. He needed that mushroom he'd never seen, a plant that seemed to exist only in legends to torture his mind. Was it truly the best decision to beg for my life to the first human who appeared? He asks himself bitterly. Suddenly, a sound of footsteps on the leaves makes his heart race, and he turns sharply to the hut door. Did that human return? Or is it someone from the tribe coming to finish the job? He thinks, as destiny knocks at his door. Kang Seol emerges from among the trees, carrying not only the rare ingredient, but the very cure for the elder's despair. He extends his hand with the mushroom, and warns that the disease hurts more than he imagined, but the objective has been achieved. The orc falls to his knees, tears streaming down his deformed face as he calls Seol blessed for the first time in his life. With a trembling voice laden with gratitude, The shaman asks for his savior's name. With a calm and determined gaze, the young man answers directly, "I am Snowman." The shaman reveals his true name, Male, meaning son of the star, sealing a pact of blood and honor. Seol delivers the cure without hesitation, focused on stabilizing his new ally for the plans that will follow. Male swears he will never forget the help received and that his debt to Snowman will be paid with total loyalty. The system confirms success. The disease has been eradicated, and Seol's vitality permanently increases for having survived the contagion. The once abandoned shaman now stands, feeling strength return to his bones, weary from exile. Grateful, Male offers his aid. "I will help you as I promised, my benefactor. What do you desire?" Seol knows time is short, and decides that today is the best moment to strike the rock teeth from within. He observes the moonlit mountain, where the tribe prepares for a blood sacrifice to the dragon Tancred. The plan begins to take shape in the caster's analytical mind, who sees every movement as a chess piece. Male explains the ritual. At midnight, all members must drink from the enormous cauldron of boiling animal blood. He hands 2 vials to Seol and asks him to use the drugs in the cauldron to facilitate the tribe's destruction. The shaman asks if Seol will be alright, remembering his mother's last words about the cruel fate of the exiles. He wishes her desire to be partially fulfilled, even if his departure causes problems in the future of that world. The suppressed vengeance quest is activated, revealing that Male's hatred for the tribe that banished him is a flame that never died. The old hut is consumed by flames as Male departs, taking with him only forbidden knowledge and a book of empty pages. Seol observes the mysterious item in his hands and questions what that book truly means for history. Male confesses his dream of being an archaeologist and recording the secrets of a vast world that banished him without reason. His plan is to roam the world, recording everything, but first, he makes one last request to his benefactor. "I wish for you to punish their barbarity through the star of intelligence you possess," the orc fervently pleads. The alert flashes on screen. Male, the son of the star, is now officially a heroic rank helper for the adventures. Seol smiles as he sees the attractive being title increase his affinity. After all, having powerful allies is any master's secret. Without wasting time, he prepares the first elixir, ready to begin the infiltration game into enemy lines. The red vial is the camouflage potion, capable of transforming any human into a troll identical to the tribe members. Seol stares at the viscous liquid, knowing that a single mistake inside that mountain would mean a slow and painful death. He takes a deep breath, focusing on the strategy he devised using his elite knowledge of game mechanics. Seol's gaze turns cold and calculating, the mark of a player who leaves nothing to chance. Suddenly, he swallows the contents of the vial and feels the world spin as his physical structure begins to mutate. The pain is unbearable, his bones breaking and reforming as the system processes the bizarre transformation in real time. Nearby, 2 orc guards sense something strange and begin to suspect someone is snooping around. One of them shouts, asking what he's doing there, warning that no one should leave their post until the festival ends. "I'm sorry, I'm going to join them now," Seol replies, already transformed into an orc and easily deceiving the guards. The system warns that he now speaks the troll language and has access to voodoo, allowing him to circulate freely like an idiot. He successfully crosses the watchtower, now focusing on finding the cauldron on the middle level of the mountain. Every step is calculated not to attract unwanted attention as he carries the potion of madness hidden in his rags. Seol observes the 5 tribal leaders, tyrannical shamans who maintain absolute control over the villagers through fear. Finally, the blood cauldron appears before him, exuding a strong metallic smell that fills the entire central cave. He knows this is the only chance to destabilize the leader's power before the final confrontation begins. "Here, look at this!" he calls a guard's attention, pretending to be just another servant bringing offerings. He offers the blood he collected, but the grumpy guard tells him to scram, saying the sacrifice is already enough. Seol insists it's the blood of the white-horned Arago, a rare item no sane orc would refuse. The guard hesitates upon hearing the beast's name and agrees to take the offering, falling directly into the trap set by the caster. "I'll deliver it to him and see what happens," the guard says. As Seol thanks him, bowing to maintain his disguise. He informs Shaman Magata that a servant has brought the rare blood of Arago to boost the midnight ritual. Magata, the leader of the land, observes the vial with curiosity, feeling the powerful energy emanating from the liquid camouflaged by mail. The leader's silence is heavy. He analyzes every drop as the tension in the air seems about to explode. "It's the real deal. You can add it," Magata orders, unknowingly sealing the tragic fate of all his warriors. The potion of madness mixes with the blood without a trace, thanks to the ingenious camouflage prepared by the exiled shaman. Seol watches from afar and thinks that Mail didn't get the heroic rank for nothing. His potion expertise is impeccable. The cauldron bubbles, now charged with the essence that will transform the celebration into a bloody battlefield. The Supreme Chief announces that midnight approaches and orders everyone to raise their goblets for the final toast. He proclaims that everything is given by the grace of the land, flesh, blood, and even the spoils of their wars. "Drink it all, leave nothing behind, and wet the earth with more blood," he shouts, encouraging their thirst for violence. The orcs celebrate frantically, believing they are following the sacred path of their Lord Tancred with absolute devotion. The clamor of the Rock Molar tribe echoes through the cave walls, a war roar that precedes the true chaos. They salute the dragon with all the strength of their lungs, diving headfirst into the trap Seol has prepared. Seol observes the crowd and realizes that all the important trolls are gathered there, facilitating his next strategic move. He confirms with his ally that the 5 lords present there are indeed the supreme commanders of that barbaric race. Mail warned him about each of them, especially about the danger they pose to the stability of the entire region. The spotlight falls on the one who eliminated all the shamans of the previous generation alone, the troll born with the power of the mountains. He is Jhamad, the tribal chief, the wisest and most resilient troll who has ever led the Rock Molars in history. The festival ends, and the silence that follows is merely the prelude to the storm that is to come. All members of the tribe have consumed the lethal mixture, and the potion of madness begins to act on their nervous systems. Not even the 5 leaders escaped. The poison of discord already runs through their veins, clouding their judgment and senses. Seol decides that it's enough, and prepares for the next step, locating the tribe's true treasure. A rustle in the leaves indicates he's close, moving like a shadow among the sentinels who begin to stagger. "I finally found it," he whispers upon seeing the entrance to the treasury, the place where the tribe keeps its most valuable secrets. The system chat explodes with confused comments, asking how Seol knows the exact location of every important item in the game. He explains that the trolls guard their most precious items there and appoint unaligned warriors as immortal guardians of the treasure. 2 massive guards block the entrance, their eyes glowing with a savage fury that would not hesitate to crush any intruder. Suddenly, one of them freezes, feeling a sharp, inexplicable pain rip through his body from the inside out. He spits blood and falls to his knees, the potion of madness peaking and destroying his physical resistance in seconds. "Die!" he screams into the void, his mind collapsing as he tries to attack non-existent shadows in a complete psychotic delirium. The blow he delivers against his own comrade is brutal, leaving the chat impressed by the effectiveness of Seol's poisoning. He cries out for Tancred as he loses control, acting like a wounded beast that no longer recognizes its own allies. "Spill more blood!" a cold voice whispers as a blade cuts through the air with surgical precision and absolute lethality. Seol realizes the guards are no match for Karuna, even if the Shadow Knight isn't at his full power. "We're going in," the caster commands, stepping into the forbidden sanctuary as the guards' bodies cool on the ground. The treasury's interior is gloomy, filled with the scent of mold and the ancient power of relics accumulated over centuries of wars. A final troll waits, seated with his giant axe, seemingly resisting the effects of madness with sheer willpower. He grinds his teeth and asks who's there, feeling his vision blurring from the drug consuming his mind. "If you're the guards from outside, leave. It's already too late," he warns, realizing something terrible has happened to his own body. Karuna charges like a blue lightning bolt, his drawn sword gleaming with a bloodlust that silences any warning or prayer. The troll lets out a roar of agony as the Shadow Knight's cold steel slices through his heavy armor as if it were paper. "Who the hell are you?" he tries to ask, but death is already sealed in the executor's icy gaze. The combat is swift and one-sided, a display of brute force and technique that makes it clear who the true predator is. The giant attempts one last desperate counterattack, but his coordination has been shattered by the potion he drank at the feast. He collapses with a thud, blood staining the stone floor as life drains from his furious red eyes. Karuna remains standing, unmoving, like a statue of death awaiting the next command from his absolute master, Kang Seol. Seol admits Karuna is powerful, but notes he is much weaker than in his original legendary form. If he had his ancient powers, the combat would have lasted a nanosecond, but Seol can do nothing about that now. The system offers the rock key. Seol must decide whether to open the door, take the key, or try to decipher its secrets. He knows exactly what lies behind that door, the gift of the dragon Tancred to the tribe that worships him with blood. It is the Stone Fist, a legendary artifact crafted from the indestructible scales of the Earth Dragon itself in ages past. The gauntlet grants the power to crush mountains and immensely boosts magical power, but carries a curse of eternal greed. To stop the internal wars, ancient shamans bound the 5 leaders with the curse of brotherhood, forcing them to cooperate. Friendly Brothers is the adventure's name, but the reality is they are monsters who wish to kill each other every second. Seol makes his decision. He will take only the rock key and leave the stone fist untouched to incite discord. For the plan of total destruction, this will be more than enough to turn the tribe into a sea of betrayal. When madness reaches its peak, the 5 leaders will rush to the treasury to ensure the fist doesn't fall into the wrong hands. Greed will be the trigger. They will not allow any of their brothers to become the wielder of the dragon's ultimate power. The cry echoes through the mountain. The treasury guardian has been killed, spreading panic among the already delirious orcs. The red-haired leader appears furious and orders them to destroy everything in their path to protect the artifact. The impact of the destruction makes the cavern tremble, dust and rocks falling as the final barrier of the treasury is brought down. Chaos is absolute. Orcs fight among themselves, unaware of who the enemy is, submerged in the toxic mist of Seol's potion. The silhouettes of the leaders stand out against the flames, moving with haste and mutual distrust towards the sacred altar. They stop in shock. The stone fist is still there, floating untouched, but the site's security has been completely breached. The red leader grinds his teeth, his fury palpable as he searches for any trace of the traitor among his peers. "Who did this? Jhamad, I'm certain you're behind this disgrace," he yells, accusing the supreme chief immediately. Jhamad, the white-haired chief, responds with an icy gaze, calling the other a fool for forgetting the curse of brotherhood. "This is no time for that. We need to contain the confusion and protect the stone fist." Another leader interrupts, trying to maintain order. They exchange threats and vows of vengeance, making it clear that the tribe's unity hangs by a thread, about to snap completely. Warriors are ordered to protect the stash with commands to kill anyone who tries to touch the dragon's forbidden artifact. Jhamad observes everything in silence, his eyes revealing an intelligence and patience that make him the most dangerous enemy of all. He steps away from the treasury, feeling that the game has changed and an external force is moving the pieces on his tribe's board. The supreme chief walks through the chaos with unsettling calm, analyzing the destruction spreading like a virus through his home. Magata reaches his quarters and finds everything in ruins, fury growing in his chest as he curses the invisible intruder. He tries to control the madness beginning to burn in his veins, knowing he needs focus to survive the bloody night. "Who's there?" he roars, sensing a hostile presence emerging from the shadows of his own fire-ravaged room. A silhouette reveals itself, and the magical pressure in the air dramatically intensifies, signaling that the hunt for the first leader has truly begun. The system warns that Seol's identity has been discovered, but the potion's effect has permanently altered his constitution for the better. Magata realizes he's been deceived by a human and prepares for combat, even while weakened by poison and madness. Seol acknowledges that, even as the weakest of the 5, Magata is still a shaman leader and must never be underestimated. However, the plan to destroy the entrance and sow the seeds of doubt among the brothers worked better than expected. "So it was you," the red orc hisses with a hatred that seems capable of setting the very air around Seol ablaze. He lunges at the human, calling him a bastard, blaming him for all the disorder and dishonor that has fallen upon the sacred mountain. Seol simply takes a step back and issues the fatal command. Karuna, kill him now, leave nothing behind. The Shadow Knight surges forward like a blur of steel and blue smoke, intercepting the shaman's attack with overwhelming force. The sound of metal tearing flesh echoes through the room, followed by Magada's muffled scream as he fails to keep pace with the Shadow's speed. The orc spits blood as he tries to stay on his feet, but Karuna's attacks are relentless, aimed at his vital points. Every blow is a death sentence, and the Earth Leader realizes he underestimated the power of the Shadow Summoner hunting him. "You demonic bastard," he curses, feeling his strength draining away as the knight prepares for the killing blow. Karuna executes the crescent moon technique, a blade of lunar energy that tears through fate and ends the life of the first tyrant. Before dying, Magada casts a curse of resentment, diminishing Seol's strength, but the caster had already anticipated this final effort. Experience is credited, and the system confirms the fall of the Earth Shaman, marking the beginning of the end for the Molar tribe. Seol analyzes the debuff and realizes it's split among party members, rendering it insignificant for his support class. He chose Magada first precisely for this reason. A Shadow Summoner doesn't need physical strength to dominate the battlefield. "Will your brothers seek revenge?" Seol asks ironically, gazing at the fallen orc's body as Karuna's shadow recedes. He smirks, realizing the other 4 leaders will be too busy trying to survive their own madness to even think of revenge now. Fire spreads through the leaders' quarters, and panic consumes the orcs, who futilely try to extinguish the flames of chaos. They scream, "Die!" at each other amidst the inferno. The once powerful tribe now cannibalizing itself in a spectacle of horror. Desperate warriors search for Magada, unaware that their lord's body has already been devoured by Kang Seol's shadows. The mountain echoes with screams of agony, a symphony of destruction marking the fall of an empire built on barbarity. The tribe's convention transforms into a blood court, where trust has been replaced by absolute fear and paranoia among the survivors. 3 remaining leaders advance through the cavern, their red eyes gleaming with the promise of unprecedented and limitless carnage. They surround Jhamad and demand he appear, accusing the supreme chief of being the true architect of all that infernal misfortune. Jhamad, the most powerful troll in history, remains seated amidst the chaos, his presence emanating a power that makes the very ground tremble. "So, you've arrived, brothers," he says calmly, his voice laden with a contempt that cuts deeper than any steel blade. The tension among the 4 tyrants is a powder keg ready to explode, exactly as the elite player Kang Seol had planned. Meanwhile, Seol relaxes in a nearby hut, calmly cooking as if the world outside weren't being devoured by fire and blood. The chat calls him a psychopath for turning the story's genre to culinary amidst an orc genocide, but Seol has a reason. He takes out the moon seed, a special rank item, and begins preparing it with a skill that leaves all spectators dumbfounded. The seed can grant permanent bonuses or temporary abilities, and Seol knows exactly which one he'll need for the final fight. To face what comes next, he sacrifices permanent stats to secure the raw power required to subdue the Supreme Chief. The correct processing technique involves slow cooking, transforming lunar energy into a mystical fuel for his human body. The dish is successfully finalized, boosting his willpower and unlocking an ancient secret known only to elite players. It's a little bland due to the rush, but the effect is what matters now, he reflects as he tastes his own mystical creation. Finding a normal house amidst this utter chaos was a stroke of luck that allowed for his complete and absolute preparation. The system confirms, "You had a great meal," signaling that Seol's body is ready for the final effort awaiting him. The moon stage ability is activated for 1 day, enveloping the caster in a silvery aura that defies the darkness of the Orc Mountain. If the brothers have gathered to prove their inferiority to him, "I'll go there and finish the job once and for all," he vows. Jhamad glares at his accusers as Seol's shadows draw near for the final checkmate that will decide the mountain's fate. One of the chiefs growls furiously, "You'd better choose your words carefully, Jhamad." Jhamad fixes the traitor with an icy stare that would make any warrior recoil in fear. The others press forward, shouting that they now suspect every word that comes from his mouth. They brazenly ask if Jhamad took advantage of the chaos to cowardly assassinate Magada. Jhamad merely whispers to himself that Magada truly met his end. He looks at the group and understands that an unknown enemy has infiltrated their tribe. The reason for the widespread madness was the poisoned blood everyone drank during the sacred ritual. Someone mixed drugs into the cauldron to destroy the tribe's unity from within, without leaving a trace. The invader attacked the treasure, killed the guardian, and even had the audacity to eliminate Magata. This wasn't the work of greedy brothers, it was the plan of someone far more cunning. Jhamad clenches his fist, admitting that all this destruction truly seems like something he would do. That's why his own brothers can't help but suspect their supreme chief now. A scream echoes as they realize the stone fist has been stolen. You traitor! You planned all of this! Jhamad smiles macabrely and drops the bomb. I did it all! Rage explodes, and the orc mages order the immediate death of the traitor Jhamad. They try to attack, but the chief's brute force makes the ground tremble before their eyes. Miyam, the mud shaman, lets out an agonizing scream before being struck by the mortal blow. The attack is relentless, and the shaman's lifeless body falls, staining the ground with blood. The system warns, Miyam left a grudge curse that severely sickens Jhamad's lungs. The giant feels the weight of the spell, but does not halt his murderous advance against the others. He sarcastically asks if they were truly waiting for this golden opportunity to kill him. His aura burns as he walks over the bodies of his former war allies. The tribe that took years to grow turned into a cemetery in just one night of madness. Another orc shouts, asking how long he thinks he can rely on the power of the stone fist. Jhamad doesn't respond with words, only with the promise of pain gleaming in his eyes. He charges forward like thunder, crushing everything that dares to stand in his path. The gravel shaman desperately tries to retreat, but Jhamad's heavy hand has already reached him. The sound of breaking bones drowns out the cries for help within that damp, dark cave. Jhamad declares that if the rock people must bleed, he will gladly follow that will, but he warns that that blood will only be from the useless, as he crushes Trogo's neck. The system glows again. Jhamad now suffers from dizziness, and his defense drastically drops. He breathes with difficulty, feeling the accumulated exhaustion from facing his own blood brothers. Tron's curse strikes his heart, preventing his life from regenerating during battle. He knows that he is now the only remaining pillar to unite what's left of the tribe. Fatigue is evident on his face, but orcish pride still keeps him on his feet. Suddenly, a cold presence emerges from the shadows, and Jhamad shouts, "Who is there now?" Karuna emerges from the darkness, her blade gleaming, ready to harvest yet another weary soul. The silence between the two combatants is heavier than any previous war cry. Karuna says with disdain, "You shouldn't fight among brothers. You should get along just fine." He draws his sword, and the air around him seems to freeze instantly with his presence. Jhamad realizes the cruel truth. So it was you who orchestrated all this infernal misfortune. The Shadow Knight doesn't deny it, merely prepares to deliver the final decisive blow. The orc calls him a demon and asks if he truly wants to dominate the entire mountain. "And come and try to take it from me," Jhamad roars, launching into a furious attack. Karuna blocks the blow with a skill that defies all laws of common physics. Sparks fly as human steel clashes against the brute force of the enraged monster. Jhamad channels all his rage to try and crush the invader with a devastating punch. Karuna elegantly dodges, moving as if dancing on a battlefield. The counterattack is swift and precise, targeting the gaps in the orc chief's heavy armor. Watching from afar, Kang Seol comments that both combatants are fighting on equal footing. Jhamad possesses the stone fist, but is exhausted after the massacre against his brothers. Seol calculates that, at this rate, Karuna will be able to subdue the giant in very little time. Jhamad shouts, asking if they think that's all it takes to conquer his territory. He unleashes a shockwave that completely cracks the cavern walls. Seol feels the danger escalating and realizes that the monster still hides a dangerous secret. The fight resumes with a violence that makes the entire mountain tremble beneath their feet. Karuna curses as he rapidly retreats, dodging a direct, deadly blow. He feels the strain of wielding the shadows, wondering if he can truly win with only half his strength. Jhamad should have been weakened by the curses, but something on the battlefield has drastically changed. The chief roars that he is the mountain itself, and no one will bring him down today. The clash between them creates an explosion of energy, blinding all who witness it. Jhamad declares that the entire world is beneath his feet as he stomps heavily on the ground. The surrounding stones float, responding to the mystic command of the powerful mountain shaman. Karuna prepares his strongest defensive stance, knowing the next blow will be a matter of life and death. Seol thinks he needs to find a way to reverse this situation before Karuna falls. He knows it's not impossible, but the timing needs to be absolutely millimeter perfect now. The system warns that Jhamad is about to unleash an earthquake of truly massive scale. The monster concentrates all his mana into his fists, emitting a golden, lethal glow. With a sky-rending roar, he unleashes all his fury upon the invader. Seol observes the destruction and realizes there's something very wrong happening in that combat. Normally, the stone fist would cause a ricochet effect that would injure the user themselves. Jhamad should be in tatters by now due to the excessive use of that raw and unstable power. Seol wonders if he missed some crucial detail about the item's true function. The monster screams for more power as his muscles swell in a bizarre and terrifying manner. He feels energy overflowing from his body as if it were an infinite source of mana. Instead of weakening the shaman, using the artifact seems to grant him even greater physical strength. Jhamad vows to crush all invaders who dared profane his sacred home today. He lunges to shatter Karuna with a blow that no one could block or evade. The Shadow Knight is thrown far away, feeling the mountain's weight in every bone. Seol questions how he still has mana after expending so much on that ultimate technique just now. There's no doubt that the Stone Fist has transformed into something incredibly dangerous. Jhamad wonders why this is only happening now, after 17 years of constant use. He followed the same method as always, avoiding any variable that could ruin his plan. Karuna gets up and realizes this is the first time they've truly fought with absolute earnestness. Seol remembers that the first target is chosen randomly, determining the mission's final difficulty. He concludes, horrified, that Jhamad's very existence has become an uncontrollable variable. Seol shouts for Karuna to be careful, but the monster is already upon him again. The collision raises a curtain of dust and debris, obscuring the entire cavern's view. Jhamad's cry echoes through the cavern, celebrating his apparent victory over the fallen enemy. In the midst of the chaos, silence reigns once more for a few desperate, tense seconds. Karuna groans in pain, trying to catch his breath as his wounded body slowly regenerates. Kang Seol feels the weight of responsibility and the shadow of defeat closing in on him. Monstrous Ogre prepares for the coup de grace with a cruel smile on his face. In this moment of life or death, Seol closes his eyes, and old memories flood back. He sees himself as a child and hears a voice urging him to flee as well. This is a memory from my past, he reflects, as the world seems to stop spinning. He was the leader of the group, and his companions were put in danger because of his mistake. The masked woman says his pieces always produce miracles, and asks for a quick decision. He chooses number 3, ordering a direct attack on the giant Zer's heels now. She asks if that attack will save his friends, but the probability is almost 0%. The die is cast, and everyone's fate now depends solely on his pure luck. I hope you get your miracle, the voice says, fading into the bright light. Back in the present, Karuna's sword strikes the target with a violent crash. Jhamad roars that he will now end everything once and for all, without any mercy. The system warns that the monster is preparing its final blow, called landslide. Seol realizes Karuna has entered the full moon phase, and his time has run out. The night shines with a silver light that blinds Jhamad for a brief instant. The monster roars that the moment is now and calls Karuna a damned blue demon. You will be crushed by Tancred's power. The orc chieftain roars with absolute and utter fury. Seol grinds his teeth and whispers to himself that this fight isn't over yet. He raises his staff and activates the volatile ability he saved for this specific moment. The system confirms the use of the secret full moon stage ability right now. The caster declares with conviction that he hasn't lost this deadly chess match yet today. He points to the battlefield, and the surrounding mana begins to swirl powerfully. The lunar aura envelops Karuna, transforming him into an unstoppable, incredibly cold war machine. Jhamad's landslide is activated, but something in the air has completely changed now. A magical mark appears on the ground, signaling the start of a new spectacle of power. The system announces, the spectacle begins now on the moon stage, for all to witness. The protagonist of this stage is the legendary Moonlight Knight, Karuna, in his full form. The rocks Jhamad launched are split in half by an invisible, cutting force. Karuna charges forward like a silver lightning bolt, moving faster than the human eye can follow. Jhamad's eyes widen, realizing his brute strength is no longer enough here. As the moonlight shines, all of Karuna's attributes increase by 50% now. The orc tries to retreat in horror, feeling his own power drained by the lunar stage. Seol watches his champion with a smile, knowing the final outcome. He encourages Karuna not to lose and orders the final blow against the fallen shaman. The system evolves the technique to full moonlight slash, a legendary ability. Jhamad lets out one last desperate scream as the silver light completely engulfs him. The explosion cleanses the cavern, leaving only the trail of destruction caused by the mighty caster. Silence reigns once more, but this time it is the silence of Seol's absolute victory. Fatigue hits the player, but he knows that the hard work finally paid off. The view opens, showing the devastated battlefield and the end of tyranny. Jhamad lies fallen, breathing with difficulty, and spitting black blood onto the cold ground now. He coughs violently, feeling life drain from his massive, utterly exhausted body. His gaze loses its hateful glint, replaced by a strange, final acceptance. Seol approaches and calmly says, "Speak your name now, Shadow Summoner." Jhamad reaches out his hand and pleads with his last breath, "Please, take me with you." He shouts that he cannot end here, for he still has things he truly needs to accomplish. His body begins to disintegrate into black shadows that dance around Seol. The system warns that Jhamad's resentment now belongs to Snowman as a mark. The chat explodes with messages. Did he really manage to defeat all 5 brothers at once? The rewards are enhanced, and the tribal treasure becomes a legendary sacred object. Seol receives the title of the Demon Who Came with the Dawn for his deeds. Another title emerges, Alienator, increasing his charisma for having isolated all enemy leaders. Karuna gains experience and his abilities are unleashed, making him even more powerful than before. Seol observes Jhamad and remembers that monsters usually hate becoming shadow summons. To be ripped from death's rest to serve the one who killed him is a fate. However, Jhamad was different and voluntarily asked to become Seol's ally. New shadow emerges and declares with loyalty, "Demon, I will be by your side now." Seol asks what he still needs to do before they leave that mountain now. Jhamad looks at the fallen bodies and says he needs to collect what remains of them. He walks among the wreckage, showing a respect that didn't exist when they were alive. Jhamad's hand touches the corpse of one of the leaders with profound sadness. Seol realizes he will use witchcraft absorption to inherit their power. The system confirms the absorption of power, increasing the strength of Jhamad's summon now. "At least we were together in our death," the shadow whispers to his former brothers. He vows that the mountain will live within him, carrying on the legacy of the Molar tribe. The survivors flee, screaming that Jhamad is dead, and the tribe's empire has finally crumbled. Seol smiles, watching the world shift according to his conquests, proving the game goes on. He opens the final treasure chest, and now receives the sacred object of the mountains,